Chapter 2750. Ha ha ha, if that day really comes, even if there is no such favor, I will ask for your help. Shuiyu was overjoyed when he heard this. He knew that this favor could even be counted as a late-stage spirit-severing stage senior. How could he not understand what it meant? He hurriedly replied with a smile. Immortal Du-yi smiled slightly and didn't say much. Shuiyu's words were very intimate, and he couldn't refute it. In the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Fong Lingbai came back with a few jade slips in his hand. He respectfully handed them to Shuiyu, but Shuiyu didn't take them. Instead, he waved his hand and asked Fong Lingbai to give them to Immortal Du-yi. Immortal Du-yi looked at Fong Lingbai, but his eyes swept to the door of the main hall. Obviously, he was waiting for news from Jin Kung. However, it had been so long, and Jin Kung hadn't come back. Obviously, there wouldn't be any good news from Xianlu sect. Alas, Immortal Du-yi sighed slightly. He picked up the jade slips and looked through them. Then, he immersed his divine sense in them and carefully checked them. The jade slip was indeed full of battle reports. There was information on the layout of the battlefield, reconnaissance, and the sorting of the information during the battle. It involved the movements of the disciples of various sects and sword shio. It was very complete and also very complicated. However, Immortal Du-yi looked very carefully. He knew that if the person his master asked him to find was in this battle, then there would definitely be some clues. At the moment when Immortal Du-yi was about to check the jade slips, there were hurried footsteps outside the main hall. Immortal Du-yi raised his eyebrows and barely suppressed the urge to release his divine sense. He looked up at the door of the hall. Shuiyu's face showed a trace of confusion. Sure enough, it was Jin Kung who came in. Moreover, there was a young Qi refinement disciple behind Jin Kung. Judging from his clothes, he was a disciple of Xianlu sect. Junior Zhou Yongchang of Xianlu sect greet Senior Shuiyu. The disciple of Xianlu sect followed Jin Kung into the hall. He first bowed to Shuiyu, then to Immortal Du-yi and Fong Lingbai. Obviously, this disciple didn't know Immortal Du-yi's identity. Well, Zhou Yongchang, get up. Shuiyu looked at Immortal Du-yi, who was also confused, and waved his hand. Jin Kung, why were you gone for so long? What's the matter with Zhou Yongchang? Okay, I'll let the city lord and Senior Du-yi know. Jin Kung bowed, and was about to answer. Zhou Yongchang, who was beside him, was shocked. He looked at Jinren Du-yi with his eyes wide open and hurriedly bowed. I have eyes but failed to see. I actually didn't recognize the senior. That's right, Immortal Du-yi was a nascent soul stage senior of the Xianlu sect. He was the existence that Zhou Yongchang and the others worshipped. Now he was right in front of him, but he went to pay a visit to the immortal of the Shui region. He actually left his own master to the side. It's all right. I don't want to show my true face in front of the younger generation. It's normal that you don't know. Immortal Du-yi waved his hand and blocked Zhou Yongchang's figure. Jin Kung, who was at the side, respectfully said, "This subordinate has asked an old friend of Immortal Music sect to help investigate. Previously, those more than 10 disciples of Immortal Music sect have all fallen. Not one of them survived." Although Jin Kung didn't say that he spent a lot of effort, but thinking that Immortal Blue Feather of Immortal Music sect had already entered the station of Immortal Music sect, how difficult would it be for the Sky Patrol City to find more than 10 disciples of Immortal Music sect a few years ago? Immortal Du-yi nodded slightly. Then Jin Kung pointed to Zhou Yongchang and said, "Nephew Zhou is Li Chengshu's nephew. He has been staying in the station of Immortal Music sect in my Sky Patrol City. He is also a meritorious person in this war, and is preparing to return to Immortal Music sect. This subordinate knows that he has some understanding of Li Chengshu's whereabouts, so I invited him to come over and meet Senior Du-yi." And Immortal Du-yi nodded even more after hearing this. He looked at Jin Kung approvingly, then turned to Zhou Yongchang and said, "This old man knows that Li Chengshu fell for no reason. I feel that there is something strange about it, so I want to investigate the truth of his fall in private. You tell me all the people and things that he came into contact with in Sky Patrol City, no matter how big or small. Yes, this junior understands." Zhou Yongchang answered very respectfully. Just as he was about to speak, Immortal Shuiyu hurriedly said, "Brother, please wait a moment. Let us leave first." Immortal Du-yi thought for a moment and nodded apologetically. Thank you for your understanding, junior brother. Immortal Shuiyu smiled slightly and left with Jin Keng and Fang Lung. Immortal Dewey looked around and found that there was no third person in the main hall. He released his divine thought and found no other Dharma power fluctuations. However, Immortal Dewey still waved his hand and cast a mute spell before asking. He saw Zhou Yongchang standing there respectfully. He seemed to be talking nonstop. He talked for the time it took to finish a meal. However, Immortal Dewey's face did not seem to be abnormal. He just listened quietly. When Zhou Yongchang finished, he raised his hand and removed the mute enchantment. He clapped his hand and took out a jade slip and handed it to Zhou Yongchang, saying, "Take this to Di Haicheng. He will naturally know what to do." "Yes, this junior thanks senior." When Zhou Yongchang heard that this thing was for his master, he immediately understood that it was an opportunity for him. He took the jade slip happily. Then he asked, "If my master asks, or if someone else asks, well, you don't have to worry about it. Just say what you want to say." Immortal Dewey said lightly. "Yes, this junior understands." Hearing Immortal Dewey's words, Zhou Yongchang was slightly disappointed that he did not need to make an oath. He knew that what he said was not what Immortal Dewey wanted. "Go, I am afraid that the flying boat in the sect will set off in a few days. You have also made contributions to our Immortal Music sect in Sky Patrol City. Although you did not break through in Sky Patrol City, I hope that you will cultivate well after returning to the sect." Immortal Dewey instructed. Zhou Yongchang hurriedly bowed. "This junior will not disappoint senior. I will cultivate hard." Then, Zhou Yongchang bowed again and slowly left the main hall. After Zhou Yongchang left the main hall, Immortal Shuiyu walked in. Jin Keng and Fang Lung did not follow behind him. "Brother, how is it?" Immortal Shuiyu asked with a smile. Alas, Immortal Dewey sighed and replied, "It was difficult." "Hee, if it was not difficult, why would Senior Chan send you here?" Immortal Shuiyu said with a smile. "Besides, there is nothing difficult in this world. As long as you search with your heart, there will definitely be clues. I hope so." Immortal Dewey took out another jade slip and said casually, "It seems that I am going to see Li Qingshu's death." This is what? Immortal Shuiyu was surprised when he saw the surprise on Immortal Dewey's face. He asked almost casually. However, he also understood that Immortal Dewey would never answer him. Sure enough, Immortal Dewey raised his eyebrows and immersed his spiritual sense into the jade slip in his hand. After reading it for a moment, he changed another jade slip. After reading it for a moment, he changed the jade slip again. Immortal Dewey's eyebrows became more relaxed. After a while, Immortal Dewey clapped his hands and put all the jade slips into his storage bag. He closed his eyes, as if he was thinking about something. Immortal Shuiyu did not dare to disturb him, and only stood quietly by the side. Junior brother Immortal Dewey suddenly opened his eyes and spoke, but he seemed to be hesitant. Immortal Shuiyu said with a smile, "Do you want Jinking or Fangling not to come?" "Forget it, no need." Immortal Dewey thought for a moment, then stood up and said, "I have some clues. Although I am not sure, I have to go and take a look. I don't need to trouble Sky Patrol City." Okay. Immortal Shuiyu knew that Immortal Dewey did not want him to know what was going to happen next, so he did not ask further. "Are you going now?" "Yes, that's right. I'll go now. According to my master, the sooner this matter is done, the better. If there is a delay, there will be a mistake. I dare not slack off," Immortal Dewey said apologetically. "Okay, then I will not keep you. I will send you out now." Immortal Shuiyu nodded and said. However, Immortal Dewey waved his hand and said, "Junior brother, you don't have to be so polite. The fewer people know about this, the better. I did not inform Lan Yu and the others before coming to Sky Patrol City, because of this. Junior brother, you can wait in the city governor's mansion." Okay, Immortal Shuiyu knew that Immortal Dewey was right, so he could only nod. Immortal Dewey was really anxious. He casually cupped his hands and quickly walked out of the main hall. Immortal Shuiyu followed Immortal Dewey out of the main hall. When he saw Immortal Dewey's back disappear into the mansion, he frowned and whispered, "This person actually offended Senior Chan and provoked Immortal Dewey to come out personally. Who is this person? Could it be that Li Qingxi was not killed by a sword cultivator? If this person… Damn it, what is this person doing? Immortal Shui Yu was not the only one who was puzzled. Immortal Du Yi quietly left the city governor's mansion. He looked around and scanned the area with his divine sense. When he did not find anything strange, he immediately turned around. However, he did not go out of Sky Patrol City. Instead, he went in the other direction of the city governor's mansion. It seemed to be the encampment of the Imperial Thunder Sect or the Shanghua Sect. After Reverend Dui had gone far away, a skinny figure flashed and appeared in the distance of the city governor's mansion. He looked at the majestic city governor's mansion, and then looked at the place where Reverend Dui had disappeared. A hint of shock flashed across his fair face. This guy, why did he come to Sky Patrol City? Could it be that person is in Sky Patrol City? Or that person also participated in the great battle of Dao cultivators? But that's not right. I heard Master say, forget it, I will just follow Dui and see if he is like I, looking for a young disciple whose cultivation is far superior to ordinary cultivators. If such a genius disciple is in the great battle of Dao cultivators, he will definitely be extremely dazzling like a comet across the sky. Of course, if Dui is really different from what I am looking for, then I will have to put in some effort. Chapter 2751. Reverend Dui and the mysterious cultivator might or might not be looking for Xiaohua. However, the four of them who rose like comets in the Great War of Dao and Sword were not in Sky Patrol City. Instead, they were flying together above the Sword Mound. However, among the four of them, except for Li Zongbao, who still looked indifferent with his hands behind his back, the other three had different expressions on their faces before they flew away. Fairy Hongxia did not need to say anything. She looked ahead with a complicated expression, as if the future was bumpy and vague, making her feel powerless. At the same time, there seemed to be a ray of light in front of her, as if the path to heaven was under the light, giving her a sense of hope. She looked at Xiao Mao, who seemed to be in a trance. Sometimes there was a ruthless look in his eyes, and sometimes there was sadness in his eyes. It was quite puzzling. As for Xiaohua, he was smiling bitterly and frowning slightly. No one knew what he was thinking about. Darling Xiao. Fairy Hongxia accompanied Xiaohua. When she looked back occasionally, she was stunned when she saw Xiaohua's expression. She smiled and said, "What are you thinking about? Why are you frowning? Could it be that this concubine is bothering you?" Haha, Xiaohua forced a few laughs and pointed his finger. The sword mound was extremely dangerous before, but now it has become a passageway. The four of us are disciples of Dao sect who have made great contributions in the Great War of Dao and Sword. Now we are going to pass through the sword mound, pass through Huan country, and head to millions of Ming mountains. If Huan country's Huajian or LV Ruochang knows about this, won't they send a large number of people to surround us? Haha, that's true. Fairy Hongxia looked at the other three and smiled. That's right, there was no need to mention Li Zongbao, Xiaohua, and Xiao Mao. Not only were they part of the special task force that attacked Qingjian, but they had also saved many Dao sect disciples during the battle. As for Fairy Hongxia, although she came to Sky Patrol City later, the three of them were already famous among the disciples of various sections. Moreover, Fairy Hongxia did not have any outstanding performance in the subsequent battles. However, in the final battle, Fairy Hongxia's phoenix celestial body appeared in midair amidst the four-square sword formation. Her oppressive connate primordial water saved many golden core cultivators in the conference hall. She even sacrificed herself to break the 5 elements sword formation, saving tens of thousands of Dao sect disciples. If not for Fairy Hongxia's battle exploits, none of the Dao sect disciples would have been able to hold on until the spirit-devouring array was activated. Furthermore, they would not have been able to hold on until Wu Ming, the nascent soul senior, arrived. Therefore, the name of Fairy Hongxia instantly spread among the various sections. Furthermore, Fairy Hongxia was a female cultivator, and was even more beautiful than a celestial being. Many golden core cultivators in the conference hall also deliberately spread the news. Fairy Hongxia's fame quickly caught up to Li Zongbao in a short period of time. She was even ranked in front of Xiao Mao and Xiaohua. The most laughable thing was that the real nameless, Xiaohua, was actually ranked last. Not only was his reputation not as high as Nameless, he was even inferior to Xiao Mao. Of course, even so, Xiao Hua, who was originally a nobody, had risen like a comet in the battle of swordsmanship, which had already attracted some people's attention. Xiao Hua did not want to reveal his superhuman strength for fear of attracting excessive attention from others and exposing the unspeakable secrets of his Buddhist sect. However, he was after all a show-off and inevitably stood out. Even though he had hidden his figure behind the radiance of Li Zongbao and the others, he could still vaguely make out his back in those moments when he was not paying attention. Fortunately, perhaps because he was overwhelmed by the brilliance of Wu Ming from the Imperial Thunder sect, or because others felt that it was inappropriate for two meritorious disciples to appear in the Imperial Thunder sect at once, when Xiao Hua flew to the left side of the Sky Patrol City, he was not recognized by the patrolling disciples of the various sections. Due to the suggestion of Sun Yunzi from the Shanghua sect, the meeting hall had to be removed from the Sky Patrol City. Although Immortal Shui did not have any objections, the defense of the Sky Patrol City had already begun to shrink. The patrolling area of the disciples of the Sky Patrol City was limited to within 10 miles of the Sky Patrol City. The other areas within 100 miles were all patrolled by the disciples of the other sections. Therefore, although Xiao Hua did not know that he had been discovered by Immortal Shuiyu and had even been listed as a must-kill target by Immortal Shuiyu, the patrolling disciples of the Sky Patrol City had also received the order to immediately report once they found traces of Xiao Hua. However, when he flew within 100 miles of the Sky Patrol City, he did not encounter any disciples of the Sky Patrol City. Before Xiao Hua sent out a message talisman to look for Fairy Hongxia, he naturally also looked for Hanju of the Kunlun sect. He did not dare to delay the matter of Jiangluer. He would rather not go to the Million Mountains to wake Jiangluer up first. However, Hanju's meeting with Xiao Hua was both outside of Xiao Hua's expectations and also within Xiao Hua's expectations. Xiao Hua couldn't help but smile wryly with a hint of worry on his face. On that day, when Xiao Hua came to the left of the Sky Patrol City, he released his Buddhist sense to look at the patrolling disciples of the Shanghua sect in the distance. He frowned and thought, perhaps I should go into seclusion for a long time after the war. Yes, although Xiao Hua had stepped into the Gold Core realm, his meridians were congenitally deficient in the Foundation Establishment realm. Now he could barely make up for and balance the meridians of the Qi refining realm. However, according to the Great Dao Zhenqing Jade Slip, his Gold Core realm had not been stable. During this period of time, although Xiao Hua did not participate in the war again, he did not have the time to meditate. Forget it, let's wake Jiangluer up first. Xiao Hua landed on the ground and was about to use his concealment technique. However, when he saw the disciples of the Shanghua sect in the distance, he pondered for a moment before changing into a Taoist robe and changing his appearance. Soon after, Xiao Hua flew up into the air and flew towards the patrolling disciples at a moderate speed. Where did this disciple come from? Xiao Hua had just flown for a while when he was discovered by the patrolling disciples of the Shanghua sect. A few of them immediately flew over. I am Feng Yi, a disciple of the Huanhua sect. Xiao Hua's face was as calm as water. He stood calmly in the air and quietly watched a disciple of the early stage Foundation Establishment realm flying over with a few disciples of the Qi refining realm. Oh, so you are also a disciple of the country of Xi. The short and fat disciple of the early stage Foundation Establishment realm heard Xiao Hua's voice and replied with a smile on his face. Xiao Hua was actually a little puzzled. The left side of the Sky Patrol City had always been patrolled by the disciples of the Sky Patrol City. When did it become a disciple of the Shanghua sect? How did the Sky Patrol City agree? However, he did not ask. Instead, he clapped his hands and took out a token. He smiled and said, I am here on the orders of my master to pass the message to the Sky Patrol City. Senior brother, please make an exception. Oh. The disciple of the Shanghua sect waved his hand, and the token fell into his hand. He glanced at it and returned it to Xiao Hua with a smile. Junior brother Feng, you came to the Sky Patrol City. Why didn't you use the teleportation formation? Now that the Great War of Dao and Sword is going on, there are many sword cultivators here. If you encounter one or two of them, I am afraid you will be in trouble. Xiao Hua took the token and said with a smile, doesn't the teleportation formation of the Sky Patrol City cost spirit stones? I wanted to take these spirit stones to the Sky Patrol City's EG, to see if there are any good flying swords. Moreover, now is the time for the two armies to rest. My Dao Sect's cultivators are tired, but aren't those swordsmen tired? You may not encounter them. Haha, I didn't expect Junior Brother Feng to be a cultivator who knows how to live. It's really rare. The disciple smiled and cupped his hands. Junior Brother Feng, please. Thank you, Senior Brother. Xiao Hua did not mind that the disciple did not mention his name. He bowed and thanked him before flying away. Junior Brother Feng. The disciple thought for a moment and said, although my Dao Sect's nascent Soul Realm Masters have arrived at the Sky Patrol City, the war has already begun. Junior Brother, when you go back, don't be stingy. It's better to use the teleportation formation. Okay, I understand. Xiao Hua replied with a smile. Of course, he asked casually, by the way, judging from Senior Brother's attire, you should be a disciple of Xianghua sect. Why are you patrolling outside the Sky Patrol City? Where are the Sky Patrol City's disciples? Haha, previously, the Sky Patrol City's disciples were patrolling within 100 miles. The disciple explained with a smile. But 10 days ago, they suddenly reduced the scope of their patrol, and only patrolled within 10 miles of the Sky Patrol City. The rest of the area was patrolled by the disciples of other sects in the Three Kingdoms. This humble Taoist was also assigned to this place today, and coincidentally bumped into Junior Brother Feng. Oh, I see. Xiao Hua suddenly understood. He rolled his eyes and asked in a low voice, is the Sky Patrol City doing this because they have lost too many disciples? Or are they compromising with the sects in the Three Kingdoms? Patrolling the Sky Patrol City is their own business. Ahem, the disciple coughed twice and said with a smile. It seems that Junior Brother Feng is not only a person who knows how to live, but also a cultivator with a strong curiosity. Unfortunately, I don't know the reason for this. If Junior Brother Feng is interested, why don't you go to the Huanhua sect's encampment and send me a message? Actually, I'm also very curious. He. Xiao Hua's face showed traces of laughter. He cupped his hands and flew away without saying anything. The disciple of Xianghua sect naturally did not care about Xiao Hua's question, and continued to patrol other places. However, Xiao Hua frowned. Strange, the Sky Patrol City actually reduced the scope of their patrol? There must be something strange about this. Forget it, what does this have to do with me? I will never enter the Sky Patrol City before I reach the advanced nascent soul stage. It had to be said that Xiao Hua, who had undergone the baptism of battle, had the ability to find problems from the details. Xiao Hua remembered what the disciple of Xianghua sect said. He flew for dozens of miles and stopped. He clapped his hands and took out the small golden Buddha that Hanju gave him. Although it was not suitable to take it out in front of Zhang Qingxiao, Xiao Hua had already checked it with his divine thought before he came. In addition to the divine thought imprisonment, there was a strange golden swan inscription. Chapter 2752. The divine sense restriction could only be broken after reaching the middle stage of the foundation establishment realm. Moreover, there was an extremely powerful offensive restriction within the restriction. Just as Hanju had said, Xiao Hua had to wait until he reached the middle stage of the foundation establishment realm, preferably the late stage of the foundation establishment realm, before he could explore the reason for the small golden Buddha. If Xiao Hua had rashly used his divine sense to check it back then, his divine sense would have been damaged first. As for the golden Buddha, after Xiao Hua had comprehended it during this period of time, he found that it was actually an extremely simple Buddhist magical power. This magical power was similar to the Taoist sect's 1,000-mile sound transmission, but it used the unique mind power of the Buddhist sect. After Xiao Hua comprehended this Buddhist magical power, he had more expectations for the mysterious Buddhist sect. After all, a cultivation path that could compete with the Taoist sect would have all kinds of strange and brilliant magical powers, right? After Xiao Hua sent out this sound transmission, he returned to his normal appearance and waited in the distance. During this period, although many divine senses swept over, and some patrolling disciples passed by, How could they find Xiaohua's trace when he was deliberately hiding? After half a day, seeing that it was already late and Hanju had not appeared, Xiaohua was a little surprised and thought, could it be that Hanju is not in Sky Patrol City? If he left Sky Patrol City temporarily, it would be easy, but if he did not come to Sky Patrol City at all, then it would be terrible. I still have to go to Lian country. Damn it, could it be that Heavenly Demon Sex information is wrong? Xiaohua was slightly impatient. If it was his own matter, he might not be like this, but it involved Jiang Luer and Xiao Xianrui. In just half a day, he had lost his sense of propriety. Fortunately, after waiting for another hour, the sky was already completely dark. Only then did a Buddha's consciousness sweep over from afar. Good, Xiaohua was overjoyed and hurriedly flew up from the ground to greet him. When Xiaohua saw Hanju flying over, his head full of white hair and the golden crown on his head could be seen clearly in the night, he was not only happy in his heart, but also smiled and bowed. Junior Xiaohua greets Martial Uncle Hanju. Brat, you almost ruined my plan. Who would have thought that Xiaohua's respect would be reprimanded by Hanju's cold face? Hanju's thick eyebrows were slightly raised, and the coldness on his face was even colder than the ice lake in the Gale snowfield. Ah! Xiaohua was shocked and looked at Hanju in panic. Come with me. Hanju released his Buddhist awareness, looked around, and flew in a certain direction. Xiaohua didn't dare to reveal his Buddhist consciousness in front of Hanju. He only followed closely behind Hanju, appearing very careful. Frost Bamboo had clearly used his Buddhist perception to search for gaps in the disciples on duty. He flew in an erratic direction, sometimes left and sometimes right, sometimes fast and sometimes slow. After flying for more than an hour, he soared into the sky and flew towards the east. Seeing that Frost Bamboo didn't care about him, Xiaohua was somewhat astonished. When he saw that Frost Bamboo was actually flying extremely fast, far faster than a Foundation establishment cultivator could catch up to, Xiaohua knew that Frost Bamboo was angry. But when he thought about it, he didn't seem to have done anything wrong. This is bad, thinking of his mistake, Xiaohua suddenly understood. A wry smile appeared on his face, and he only used ordinary flying techniques to fly in the direction that Hanju disappeared. Here, Xiaohua flew for more than 100 miles when Hanju's cold voice sounded in his ears. Yes. Xiaohua knew that he was wrong, but he didn't dare to say more. He flew in the direction of the voice again. During this time, Hanju actually changed direction many times. After circling around for about an hour, he finally stopped at a depression in the mountain peak. Just as Xiaohua landed on the ground, Hanju stretched out his hand and waved the golden embroidered formation flag. A brilliance flashed from the left, blocking the two figures. Only the whistling cold wind blew from the depression in the mountain. Senior. Xiaohua very respectfully bowed in greeting. Unfortunately, Hanju's face was cold again, indicating for Xiaohua to be quiet. He sat down cross-legged, ignoring Xiaohua. Xiaohua sighed and also sat across from Hanju. After another hour, Hanju opened his eyes and coldly said, Xiaohua, you almost killed me. Do you know? Yes, this junior already communicated with you on the way here. Xiaohua hastily stood up and respectfully said. This matter was indeed his fault, he couldn't not admit it. Don't think that you can be arrogant just because you are a person of merit in the Great War of Dao Sword. Don't think that you are a famous cultivator in the cultivation world now that you can be so careless, so carefree, and so careless. Hanju coldly said. In the eyes of us Golden Core cultivators, your merit is nothing but a joke. Although you killed Qin Jian, that was Li Zongbao's greatest merit. Although you already have a reputation, you are still behind Li Zongbao. Moreover, you have a Buddhist cultivation technique. If you are so ostentatious, it will be very easy for the Dao sect cultivators to discover you. Once you are discovered, you will definitely die. And if your cultivation is exposed, this old man will also be implicated by you. This junior was wrong. This junior won't dare to do it again. Xiaohua knew that Hanju was right. Hanju was also worried about his safety. If there was a problem with him, he would indeed implicate Hanju. This old man has already told you. Hanju lectured Xiaohua again. This Buddhist cultivation technique cannot be detected by those below the Golden Core stage. However, for nascent soul cultivators, Their nascent souls are already able to communicate with the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and merge with it. As long as there are any strange movements nearby, they will be able to detect it. I have repeatedly warned you not to use Buddhist awareness in front of nascent soul cultivators. You are really good. Now there are no less than 20 nascent soul cultivators in Sky Patrol City. You actually used mind reading outside Sky Patrol City. Damn it, this old man was beside my Kunlun sect's Shakongzi at that time. Your Buddhist cultivation technique immediately attracted his attention. Do you know? Shakongzi is a nascent soul cultivator who kills people like flies. If he discovered that this old man is a Buddhist cultivator, would this old man still be alive? Yes, this junior. My thoughts were not good. I was really muddle-headed at that time. What else could Xiaohua say? He could only reply apologetically. Now that you are already a meritorious figure in the Great Tao Cultivator War, it is not impossible for you to openly come to my Kunlun sect to visit I. Hanju said somewhat resentfully. Even if you sent a communication talisman, it is still good. There is no reason for you to mysteriously hide outside Sky Patrol City and send this old man some mind reading. Sai, this junior was wrong. Xiaohua could not explain anything and could only lower his head to listen to Hanju's reprimand. Hanju scolded for a moment before his anger subsided. At that time it was indeed very dangerous. Hanju also felt a lingering fear when he thought about it now. He delayed leaving the city for half a day and was so cautious when he saw Xiaohua. But your cultivation has really exceeded this old man's expectations. Hanju sighed and looked at Xiaohua. Not only have your cultivation reached the middle stage of foundation establishment, you can even use mind reading. You have indeed worked hard all these years. You are indeed worthy of being the first Buddhist cultivator that this old man has seen in 100 years. Compared to you, the others are far inferior. The others? Xiaohua was slightly stunned, but he did not ask further. Release your Buddhist consciousness and let this old man have a look. Hanju said impolitely. Yes, Xiaohua endured for a moment and released his Buddhist consciousness. Hanju also released his Buddhist consciousness and said with some surprise, why is your Buddhist consciousness becoming more and more indifferent? This old man thought that your Buddhist consciousness would have some progress. This junior actually did not cultivate much, Xiaohua said with a smile. Even the great strength Vajra Dharma body, this junior did not cultivate it. And this old man naturally knows that the great strength Vajra Dharma body is not something that can be cultivated overnight. It requires great perseverance and great patience to succeed. Hanju waved his hand and said, but your Buddhist consciousness, Sai. This old man was originally a little surprised. It seems obviously Hanju was a little disappointed. He stretched out his hand and said, where is your Buddhist cultivation technique? Let this old man have a look. If it was the first time they met, Hanju would have taken out Xiaohua's Buddhist sect cultivation method. Xiaohua really wouldn't have dared to take it. But at this time, he generously clapped his hands and took out the Prajnaparamita Heart Sutra and handed it to Hanju. Hanju released his Buddhist consciousness and only took a rough look before returning it to Xiaohua. He said with some disdain, the level of this Heart Sutra is too low. I am afraid you will have to change it. But this old man is not prepared enough. Actually, this junior came here to find senior because there is another matter that I need to ask senior. Xiaohua knew that Hanju was thinking about going to the Buddhist ruins again, so he hurriedly said the Heart Sutra. Oh, what is it? This old man thought you wanted to go to the Buddhist ruins. Hanju said curiously. Xiaohua stretched out his hand and took out a spirit storage bag. This action made Hanju very surprised. However, when Xiaohua actually took out Jiang Lure from the spirit storage bag, Hanju's eyes widened. His broom-like eyes trembled violently, and he almost laughed out loud. But when he saw Jiang Lure's situation clearly, an extreme shock appeared in his eyes. But then he narrowed his eyes and suppressed the shock. He looked at Xiaohua and said, this little guy is your blood relative? He also practiced your Heart Sutra? I will let senior know. Xiaohua saw Hanju's shock and was overjoyed. He knew that Hanju was indeed an expert of the Buddhist sect and knew about Jiang Lure's situation. He hurriedly said, Although he is not my blood relative, he is still someone very close to me. Because he is already old, this junior let him come in contact with my Buddhist sect's Heart Sutra. Hanju nodded slightly and asked, how long did he practice before he entered the heart-extinguishing realm? Heart-extinguishing realm? Xiaohua was slightly stunned. His mind spun quickly, looking for this realm in the exquisite Leaf Sutra. Unfortunately, Xiaohua seemed to have never heard of this realm. He only practiced for a few months. Xiaohua hesitated and said carelessly. Chapter 2753. What? Only a few months? Hanju almost cried out in surprise. He didn't have the bearing of a golden core cultivator, and there was even a hint of jealousy in his eyes. Yes, that's right, Xiaohua said with a smile. This child has entered this heart-extinguishing realm without fasting. I'm afraid something will happen to him. I can't wake him up, so I hope Senior can be merciful and wake him up. His mother is very worried. Ha ha ha, Hanju laughed and pointed at Jiang Luer saying, there's a saying in the secular world, you don't know how lucky you are. This heart-extinguishing realm, I have been begging for hundreds of years, but I couldn't get it. This child has just started practicing the Heart Sutra, and he can enter such a difficult realm. That's simply an unparalleled fortune. You actually want to wake him up? You're simply harming this child. But he's already so thin, his vitality is drifting. If we don't wake him up, wouldn't we be harming him? Xiaohua said happily. Sai, the so-called heart annihilation stage is similar to my Dao Sect's void stage. All thoughts, auras, and even life will be annihilated. Only in this annihilation can one find one's true self. Moreover, the longer one stays in the heart-extinguishing realm, the more beneficial it is to Buddhism's cultivation. In fact, he might even be able to cultivate to the legendary realm of the Buddhist sect's Supreme Buddha. Tell me, do you still want to wake him up? Hanju sighed. If that's the case, I naturally won't wake him up. Xiaohua laughed. But then he frowned, saying, but he fasted yet. If it's too long, will it work? Xiaohua, you're confused because you're too concerned. Hanju laughed. How could you forget? How can there be anything in this world that's only beneficial and not harmful? Although the unsullied realm was extremely crucial to cultivators, but how could ordinary cultivators enter the unsullied realm as they wished? If one doesn't have enough Dao foundation, as long as one enters it, he won't be able to come out, right? Yes, these disciples all know. Xiaohua was anxious when he heard this. This child has been in the heart-extinguishing realm for long enough. Senior, please be merciful and wake him up. Although it will cause some harm to him, it can at least preserve his life, right? What a pity, Hanju said regretfully. I only know that the Buddhist sect has a method to awaken him, but I don't know what method it is. Senior, you don't know? Who else in this world would know about it? Xiaohua said anxiously. Alas, I'm afraid that the solution can only be found in the ruins of the Buddhist sect. Hanju sighed and shook his head. Senior, shall we head to the Buddhist sect's ruins now? Xiaohua didn't want to go to the Buddhist sect's ruins, but he could only suggest this at this moment. Hanju sneered and said, nonsense. I've just arrived in Sky Patrol City and haven't fought against a sword cultivator yet. How can I head to the Buddhist sect's ruins? Besides, do you think it's easy to go to the Buddhist sect's ruins? If we don't make sufficient preparations, not only will we not be able to find the mental cultivation method to awaken him, but we will also be trapped inside and consigned to eternal damnation. Alas, Xiaohua sighed. He knew that Hanju was telling the truth. He could come and go freely in the Great War of Dao Sword because of Li Zongbao's special permission from the conference hall. It could also be said that it was necessary for the war. Now that Hanju had just arrived in Sky Patrol City and was waiting in front of Sha Kongzi, a nascent soul master, how could he leave just like that? When will you be free, Senior? Xiaohua said helplessly. What are you asking? How would I know? It's not like you haven't participated in a war before. Hanju said faintly. Then he clapped his hand and took out a message talisman and handed it to Xiaohua. This is my message talisman. You can send me a message when you enter Sky Patrol City. Where's your message talisman? If I'm free, I'll naturally send you a message. Yes, I understand. Xiaohua lowered his head and took Hanju's message talisman. He also gave his own to Hanju. It's just that when Hanju accepted Xiaohua's message talisman, he looked at Jiang Luer with great regret and said, "If there are no accidents, when I'm free, it should be the end of the Great War of Dao Sword. You better take good care of him and don't let him be in danger. Alas, I'll do my best." Xiaohua could only sigh as he watched Hanju put away the Dharma array. Hanju did not even look at Xiaohua as he flew away. That direction was not the direction of Sky Patrol City. Clearly, Hanju was still afraid that others would see through his tracks. Thinking of the helplessness in his heart when he watched Hanju fly away that day, Xiaohua blamed himself again. Damn it! Why did I give Jiang Luer the Buddhist Heart Sutra that day? Of course, he is capable of practicing, but to stumble into such a state of great fortune. But just as this thought came to his mind, Xiaohua was suddenly stunned and his heart suddenly became clear. I've practiced the hand of cause and effect for many years. Why haven't I realized it yet? Since Jiang Luer can't practice Taoism, he naturally has to find other ways to practice. I have the Heart Sutra of Prajnaparamita, which was sent to him by the heavens through me, and he has just practiced this Heart Sutra and immediately entered the heart-extinguishing state, which is hard to find in a lifetime. Such a great opportunity. Doesn't it indicate that Jiang Luer really has the hope of becoming a Buddha in the future? Moreover, didn't Hanju say that? As long as Jiang Luer's vitality is maintained, he will be fine. Since the heavens let Jiang Luer enter the heart-extinguishing state, they will naturally let him out of it. What's the use of worrying here? And didn't the heavens plant the karma for Jiang Luer decades ago, and want me to enter the Buddhist sect ruins decades later today? Presumably, there must be a way to solve the problem of Jiang Luer's heart-extinguishing state in the Buddhist sect ruins. Darling Xiao, what are you laughing at? Fairy Hongxia thought that her request made Xiaohua feel awkward, so she had been paying attention to Xiaohua's expression. Seeing Xiaohua smile, she was happy and asked in a low voice, "Hee, to be able to accompany you all on a trip to the Hung country, this Xiao is extremely happy." Xiaohua naturally would not explain the reason for this matter clearly to Fairy Hongxia, and replied with a smile. "You are the heaven's favored ones." Fairy Hongxia pursed her lips and smiled. Master Wu's name is now second to none in the Sky Patrol City. Tisk Wu Ming is Wu Ming, how can there be such a person? Xiaohua laughed. On the contrary, Fairy Hongxia's reputation was previously only in Shi country. Now not to mention Lian country and Ming country. Even the sword cultivators in Huang country have heard of you. Isn't it all thanks to darling Xiao? Fairy Hongxia reached out and held Xiaohua's arm. If not for darling Xiao's innate primordial water, I would have died in the sword tomb. Impossible. Xiaohua sneered. If any sword cultivator dares to hurt you, I, Xiaohua, will kill my way to the sword cultivator's sect and annihilate their entire sect. Fairy Hongxia was very happy. However, looking at Li Zongbao's lonely back in front, she whispered, I didn't expect that the time that sister went out was not long, and the time that she spent with senior brother Li was also not long? Why is senior brother Li so deeply in love? Sigh, not only was it not long, it was almost very short. Xiaohua was with Kai Wuxia during that period of time, so he naturally understood the reason. He sighed and said, What is love in the world? It is called a life and death commitment. After saying that, Xiaohua transmitted a few more words. Fairy Hongxia blushed and whispered, Although I did not meet you much and your cultivation at that time was very low, but the things that sister entrusted you with, those precious spirit stones, and that 99th piece of good fate token. To you, every one of them was an opportunity. Any one of them could change your life. However, you did not hesitate to give them to me. That kind of spirit, that kind of determination, really opened my heart in an instant. At that time, I was still regretting. Who asked sister to meet you first? Since you are not the person in sister's heart, then I will definitely capture you in my hands. Not only in your hands, right? Xiaohua looked at Fairy Hongxia with a lecherous gaze. Fairy Hongxia pinched Xiaohua's arm slightly, but her eyes were looking forward. Oh, Fairy Hongxia was a little surprised and whispered, Xiao Hua, look at Xiao Mao. Ever since you sent a message to me outside the city, I have never seen his smiling face. Now that his face is getting darker, you should ask him. Xiao Hua had something on his mind, so of course he did not notice Xiao Mao's abnormality. Now that the knot in his heart was gone, he heard Fairy Hongxia's words and looked over. Indeed, he saw something wrong with Xiao Mao. He nodded and said, and since this child recognizes me as his big brother, then I have no choice but to take care of his matters. He is our brother, you should also take care of him. And I naturally know this. During the Battle of the Sword Catacomb, I have already taken care of him. Fairy Hongxia nodded and replied. Then Xiao Hua flew over. Seeing Xiao Hua coming over, Xiao Mao forced a smile and said, Big brother, and since you are calling me big brother, then let me ask you, did something happen again? Hearing this, Xiao Hua's face showed a serious expression as he asked. This? Xiao Mao hesitated for a moment, then smiled and said, It's nothing. It's just that I am in a bad mood and attracted Big Brother's attention. Forget it. If you're going to hide things like this, why do you still need to call this Xiao Big Brother? Xiao Hua said unhappily. Sigh, Big Brother, if it was something else, why would I be so courteous with you? Xiao Mao sighed and said, On the battlefield, the spiritual stones, skills, weapons and merits were all given by Big Brother, right? When did Little Brother ever say a word of thanks? Then why are you here today? Xiao Hua asked him politely, treating Xiao Mao as his brother. Xiao Mao pursed his lips, his eyes flashing with a strange light. He nodded fiercely and said, To be honest, Big Brother, I met my enemy again in Sky Patrol City. Chapter 2754. Oh, your enemy? Xiao Hua was slightly stunned. He looked at Fairy Hongxia and then at Li Zongbao. Knowing Xiao Mao's concerns, he nodded and said, In that case, it's fine if you don't say it. If you feel that I have the ability to help you, you can say it. It's better for you to say it now, Li Zongbao said faintly. Now that your state of mind has changed again, if you don't say it, I'm afraid it won't be beneficial to your future cultivation. Although I can't help you in any way, I definitely won't hinder you in any way. This Xiao Mao was still hesitant. After all, the relationships between the various sects in the Xiaoyu continent were intricate and complicated. This kind of blood feud was the most important thing. If it was leaked, it would be a fatal disaster. Xiao Mao didn't even dare to tell Xiao Hua. How would he dare to tell Li Zongbao and Fairy Hongxia? Actually, in this world, there are still a few trusted friends. If even this trust can't exist in this world, this path of cultivation will become narrower and narrower, and lonelier the more you walk. Xiao Hua understood Xiao Mao's concerns. Naturally, he also knew that Xiao Mao had kept this secret since young, and the burden in his heart was extremely heavy. Xiao Hua himself also had many secrets that he couldn't tell others, so he was also very tired. Even Xiao Hua himself had a blood feud. His responsibility was probably not lighter than Xiao Mao's. He still had Zhongqing Xiao and Xiao Xinrui to confide in, but Xiao Mao could only keep it in his heart. Xiao Hua could understand his bitterness. However, Li Zongbao cultivated the parting feelings treasure mirror, and was extremely sensitive to Xiao Mao's emotional fluctuations. Since he said there was a problem, then Xiao Mao really had some problems. Xiao Hua didn't want to see Xiao Mao walk down the wrong path, so he could only say so. Xiao Hua is right. The cultivation path is long and there are enemies, opponents and also close friends. You have to treat them differently. Li Zongbao still said slowly. You don't have to mention names. Left and right Sky Patrol City are all nascent soul cultivators. Even if you don't say it, I know it's nascent soul. Sigh, thank you Senior Brother Li for your reminder. Xiao Mao sighed. The blood feud has always been a thorn in my heart. Back then when I entered Xuanyan school, I treated this blood feud as the most important thing in my cultivation. It was also the motivation for my cultivation. But in the past, your little brother's aptitude was lacking, and I always failed. Every time I think about this matter, my heart feels like it's being twisted by a knife, and I secretly hate myself for not being able to avenge my mother. With hatred as your goal, you won't go far in your cultivation. You might not even be able to take revenge in the end. Li Zongbao said. Only by seeing the great Tao as your goal can you trample on hatred. Yes, Senior Brother Li is right, Fairy Hongxia whispered. As long as you put down your hatred and cultivate in peace, you will be able to reach the realm of revenge. Yes, Senior Sister, Senior Brother Li, I understand. Xiao Mao smiled bitterly. But if you really want me to do it, it really won't be easy for me. Xiao Mao, which cultivation family are you from? Li Zongbao frowned and said, I don't remember any aristocratic family with the surname Xiao in the state of Xi. It seems that the state of Lian only has the Xiao family of the Dark King Valley. But that Xiao family is very small and very far away from the state of Xi. I'm not a disciple of a cultivation family. Xiao Mao shook his head and said, Ever since I can remember, I've been living with my mother, in a place in the state of Xi. It was an extremely quiet valley. My mother and I think there was also my father. It was just the three of us. My father farmed in the fertile land of the valley, while my mother repaired clothes and taught me how to read and read. As he said that, Xiao Mao's eyes were filled with warmth. He raised his eyes to look at the distant morning sun and whispered, This situation often appeared in my dreams in the past. But with the passage of time, this situation actually became blurry. Other than my mother's appearance, I still have some impression. As for my father's appearance, I can't even remember clearly. Xiao Hua and the rest didn't dare to disturb Xiao Mao's rare situation, and silently flew by his side. I remember that my father, or my mother, had a good friend, but I've never seen him before. Every time he came, when I was about to fall asleep, I felt like I was in a dream, but also like I was in a straw hut. His voice was a little strange, different from ordinary people. Other than him, the place where I lived, there was no fifth person. I always thought that there were only 4 people in this world. Everything in the book was just in the book, not in this world. However, when I saw the 5th person, although it was a rainy autumn day, although I was still drowsy at that time, but his appearance, I remembered it clearly. And when he killed my father and mother, and when I saw blood red, my mother even whispered his name in my ear. Ah! Fairy Hongxia was slightly stunned and looked at Xiao Mao strangely. She asked in astonishment, Xiao Mao, how old were you at that time? He, Senior Sister. Xiao Mao laughed, his eyes filled with desolation. I know what you want to say. There's something strange about this matter. I still don't understand, and haven't been able to figure it out. Indeed. Li Zongbao nodded. When you entered Xuanyan cult, you were only 4 or 5 years old. You were only 3 years old in front of your father and mother. The memory of that time is already a little blurry. You can't even remember your father's appearance, and your mother, who was closest to you, is also getting increasingly blurry. Since your enemy could kill your father and mother, he can also kill you. How did you manage to live peacefully until now? In my memory, there are only a few scattered impressions. When my father and mother died, my eyes were all blood red, but that bastard's appearance was deeply imprinted in my mind. It seems like, you bastard also attacked me, but I still remember that bastard was terrified, and had a strange expression on his face. After that, I don't remember anything else. Then how did you enter Xuanyan cult? Xiao Hua frowned and asked. When I woke up, I was already in the arms of a senior brother in Xuanyan cult. Xiao Mao laughed bitterly. He brought me to Golden Goose Ridge, and I was lucky enough to pass the entrance test, which was how I entered Xuanyan cult. However, this senior brother was already old. When I was 6 years old, he had already passed away. This senior brother. You didn't ask him how he met you? Fairy Hongxia frowned. After I entered Xuanyan cult, it was this senior brother who took care of my daily life, so I naturally asked him. Xiao Mao's face showed his recollection. However, he only said that he saw me unconscious by the roadside, and that my foundation was extremely good. At that time, it was also the time when Xuanyan cult was recruiting disciples, so he casually brought me into Xuanyan cult. This person really, he didn't even ask if I was someone else's lost child. Fairy Hongxia didn't understand. Senior brother had good intentions. Xiao Mao shook his head. Senior brother said that when he saw me, it was in an extremely desolate place. There was no sign of human habitation at all. Where was that? I'm afraid it was very close to the valley where you lived? Xiaohua asked. Senior brother said it before, but I was still young at that time, so I don't remember it clearly, Xiao Mao said regretfully. Xiaohua heard and didn't pursue the matter further. This was Xiao Mao's privacy, and now that he had said so much, it was already good enough. If it was as you said, and your enemy was a nascent soul cultivator, then your parents are not ordinary people, Li Zongbao said lightly. Furthermore, that good friend of your parents must also be an extremely powerful expert. From what I saw, he must have rushed to the valley when that bastard attacked your parents. Although he didn't manage to save your parents, he still managed to save you. The fear he had then must have been the fear of seeing that person. That should be the case. Xiao Mao nodded. I was too young at that time, so I can't remember it clearly. I still have some doubts. Fairy Hongxia frowned. If it was as senior brotherly said, then Xiao Mao's parents should at least be golden core cultivators. Even if they hid from the world for reasons unknown to us, they should have used some methods to refine Xiao Mao's body after he was born, otherwise, his cultivation wouldn't be so low. That's true, Li Zongbao muttered. Regardless of whether it was a cultivation family or a cultivation sect, they all emphasized on inheritance. Every family and sect had some secret techniques, which were used by the sect's disciples when they were young. These secret techniques could not only ensure that these disciples could cultivate extremely quickly, but also ensure that they could go further on the path of cultivation. As for Xiao Mao's parents, they only taught and knew how to read. That was really unique. Confucian cultivators. Xiaohua suddenly froze and looked at Xiao Mao in shock, thinking, could it be that this Xiao Mao is the same as the Zhu family in Jinghua City? Or even a descendant of Confucian cultivators like Yu Zhongqiuan? After their parents went into hiding, they were discovered by someone and were then killed? But looking at Fairy Hongxia and Li Zongbao, Xiaohua wasn't afraid that they would know about Confucian cultivators. But he still said carefully, maybe Xiao Mao's parents didn't want Xiao Mao to cultivate and only wanted him to live a peaceful life? I don't agree with that. Fairy Hongxia immediately objected. Which family's parents don't want their boy to live a long life? If he cultivated, he could even live a long life. How could he only know how to read and read? Actually, it wasn't just the ordinary kind of reading and reading. Xiao Mao said hesitantly. My mother also taught me some words from my hometown. Oh, your family isn't from Xi? Fairy Hongxia was stunned. Of course not. Hearing Xiao Mao's words, Xiaohua was even more certain that Xiao Mao's parents were Confucian cultivators. The inscription on the armor was completely different from the words used by cultivators. If they were from Xi, they would have gone to Meng or Lian, or even Huan to avoid their enemies. Chapter 2755. That's not necessarily true. The most dangerous place is also the safest place. Fairy Hongxia insisted. Xiaohua shrugged, knowing that he could not reason with the female cultivator, so he did not say anything more. Sigh, time is really a spiritual pill that makes people forget. After saying so much, Xiao Mao felt a little better. He took out a warm jade pendant from around his neck and rubbed it lovingly. I remember that this jade pendant was worn on my mother's neck. I liked to touch it when I was young. However, before I went to Jinghua City to train, I had never seen it. I thought that it had disappeared and I would never see it again. I did not expect to see it at Jinghua City's e.g. Hehe, of course, if not for this jade pendant, I would not have known you. Xiao Mao looked at Xiaohua. What kind of story is this? Fairy Hongxia raised her eyebrows and smiled. I have never asked, how did my dear Xiao get to know junior brother Xiao? Hehe, it's actually very simple. However, it was all caused by a scam. Xiaohua did not hide anything, and gave a brief account of what had happened in Jinghua City. Fairy Hongxia's eyes lit up as she listened, and she reached out to hold Xiaohua's hand. Although she did not say anything, the feelings in her heart were unmistakable. Sigh, no wonder Wuxia likes you so much. Li Zongbao sighed. I was also with her in Jinghua City that day. If I had encountered such a thing, I'm afraid I would not have done anything. Hehe, if it was senior brother Li, you would have already beaten that cultivator to a pulp. Xiao Mao laughed. Impossible. Li Zongbao said mercilessly. You are a disciple of Xuanyan school, and Zhuoqing Yuan was also beside you that day. If he did not care, I naturally would not care either. Hee, that's why I am Xiao Mao's big brother, you are not. Xiao Hua said proudly. What about that scoundrel cultivator? Li Zongbao ignored Xiao Hua and said indifferently, since he has your mother's jade pendant, he must know something. You have not gone to find that guy? I'm just a foundation establishment disciple, and I was only at Qi Refinement before. How could I go to Jinghua City freely? Xiao Mao smiled bitterly. Furthermore, I've failed the trial in Jinghua City. The sect will not allow me to go there again. Forget it. The past is the past. What's important is the future. Fairy Hongxia comforted. If you were to live in the past, your mother and father would not be willing. Thank you, senior sister. Xiao Mao's mood had indeed improved as he bowed and said, Hee, you're welcome, you're welcome. We'll be a family in the future, Xiao Hua said with a smile. Tisk, Fairy Hongxia smiled faintly and spat lightly. Xiao Mao looked around and revealed a smile. He looked into the distance and said, Senior sister, we have already passed the battlefield of the Sword Mound. Is this the right direction? When Fairy Hongxia heard this, she stopped blushing. She clapped her hands and took out an ancient jade pendant. She looked at it with her divine thought for a moment and said hesitantly, What is recorded in this jade slip is the previous route of the Sword Tomb. Now that the Sword Tomb has disappeared, I can't make up my mind. Let's go. Anyway, there are no longer any magic arrays or sword arrays in the Sword Catacomb. There are only a few spatial cracks. We just need to be careful, and we should be fine. Seeing Fairy Hongxia looking at him, Xiao Hua hurriedly shrunk his neck and suggested, Yes, junior brother Xiao is right. The Sword Tomb has disappeared, so the obstacle in the path of swordsmanship is also gone. The secret passage in the Sword Tomb is naturally useless. However, it is the Sword Tomb that has disappeared. The Hung country still exists. We just need to pass through the Sword Tomb and reach the Hung country first. Li Zongbao said calmly as he led the way. Although he said that, everyone felt that passing through the Sword Tomb was not a difficult task. However, after flying for another hour, Xiao Hua's expression changed. He whispered, Senior brother Li, there are sword cultivator patrolling disciples ahead. Should we fight or hide? Hide, of course, Li Zongbao said without hesitation. This is the sword cultivator's territory. Our goal is to pass through the Hung country, not to fight to the death with them. Yes, little brother understands. It's better for little brother to lead the way, Xiao Hua said as his figure flew up and flew towards the sky. Fairy Hongxia and the rest looked helpless. It seemed that the disappearance of the Sword Tomb was not a good thing. Instead, it made it difficult for them to pass through. If the Sword Tomb had been there before, with the jade slip passed down by Fairy Hongxia's ancestors and the secret passage, even if they met sword cultivators within a few miles, they would not be discovered. Now, with a sweep of the sword cultivator's spiritual force, Xiao Hua and the rest not only had to avoid the spatial cracks, they also had to avoid the sword cultivator's spiritual force patrol. The most helpless thing was that because of the disappearance of the Sword Tomb, the sword cultivators, who had never set up defenses in the Sword Tomb, had now sent out many disciples to guard the passage to the Sword Tomb, preventing the Dao sect cultivators from killing their way into the Hung country. After flying for half a day, their direction was messed up. Xiao Hua was like a headless fly flying around. Fortunately, there was still Li Zongbao and the rest. Although they had been taking a roundabout route, they were still advancing towards the Hung country. Sayu, didn't the Kai family move from the Million Meng Mountains to the Shi country long ago? This sword tomb might not have existed at that time. Your Kai family's ancestral jade slip should have the route from a long time ago. Xiao Hua looked at Fairy Hongxia's expression and muttered softly. My Kai family naturally has the route from the past. But that was in the Qingyang Kai family. The route in the jade slip was obtained by Master with great difficulty. How could it be so well prepared? Fairy Hongxia's face turned cold as she said. Besides, who would have known that the boring Nameless would actually sweep the sword tomb clean? If you want to blame someone, blame that Nameless. That's right. This Uncle Nameless is really boring. Xiao Hua laughed. Why didn't he think of such a thing? Bah! Fairy Hongxia spat lightly. Just as she was about to retort, suddenly 3 soaring sword intents swept across the sky from afar, instantly attracting everyone's attention. Especially Xiaohua. The sword energy in his body was somewhat out of control. The Dream Executioner and Mountain Splitter were rapidly vibrating, wanting to let out a sword cry. Xiaohua was shocked. He knew that the sword intents in the distance were 3 swordsmen who had transformed into swords. He hurriedly used the secret technique of concealing the sword energy and tried his best to calm the 2 flying swords. Luckily, Li Zongbao and the rest were attracted by the sword intents and did not notice the changes in Xiaohua's sword energy. Damn it, this sword cultivator's sword energy is too sensitive. Xiaohua was very helpless. Why is it that every time I encounter sword intents, the sword energy would be attracted by them? If I could control the sword energy like true energy and send it into the Dantian, wouldn't it be much safer? Why not? Thinking of this, Xiaohua's heart suddenly flashed with an unimaginable thought. This sword energy is flowing in the body, and it seems to be near the middle Dantian. If I could store the sword energy in the middle Dantian, wouldn't it not be so complicated? The middle Dantian. It's a pity that this young master's middle Dantian is sealed. It's impossible to even try. No, Xiaohua thought again. In this young master's impression, the middle Dantian has a qi refining cultivation method. But which cultivation method is it? Yes, there are some records on the inscriptions on the tortoise shell. It's a pity that the cultivation method of that Confucian cultivator has been incomplete for a long time. Although this young master has looked at it for a long time, I only know the outline. The cultivation method that Yu Zhongquan left for Huang, it can be cultivated, and even has a shortcut. But without the middle Dantian, everything is useless. While Xiaohua's imagination was running wild, the 3 sword intents that had transformed into swords had already streaked across the sky above Xiaohua and the rest's heads. Xiaohua and the rest did not dare to delay. They hurriedly stopped in midair, and quietly waited for the 3 swordsmen to pass. Moreover, the 4 of them were extremely nervous. After all, the swordsmen had already joined the battle. Moreover, the 4 of them had entered the Hung country through the sword tomb. They did not know how many of these swordsmen would meddle in other people's business. It seems that there are not only 3 swordsmen. Xiaohua's gaze swept across and saw that among the 3 swordsmen, there were 2 rays of light, 1 gold and 1 green. He could not help but be stunned. Moreover, the 2 rays of light were flying in the middle, and the 3 swordsmen surrounded them. It was as if they were protecting them. The 3 divine intents closely followed the sword intents and swept across. Upon discovering them, Xiaohua and the rest were slightly stunned and firmly locked onto the 4 of them. This is bad. Xiaohua secretly complained in his heart. If he was here alone, he might have a way to escape. But Li Zongbao and the rest might not have a chance. Fairy Hongxia and the rest's expressions changed as well. Their faces were even a little pale. Although the 3 divine intents locked onto the 4 of them, when the 5 rays of light flew over their heads, one of the swordsmen landed beside Xiaohua and the rest. When the ray of light retracted, they saw a well-built sword-transformed elder within the ray of light. Who are you? Why did you barge into my sword domain? The sword-transformed elder berated. Don't you know that we swordsmen can also attack now? If I wanted to take your lives, it would be as easy as flipping my hand. Senior is right. We Foundation Establishment disciples are far from being a match for a sword-transformed cultivator like you. Li Zongbao said indifferently, but the battle between the Dao and the sword Dao is currently resting and has not officially begun. Moreover, we have already escaped from the great battle of Dao and sword. We are just traveling around. Could it be that you sword-transformed elder want to take the lives of the Dao sect cultivators, regardless of whether they are Qi refinement or golden core cultivators? Hee, what a sharp-tongued child. The sword-transformed elder's face turned green, as if a faint green color was seeping out from under his skin. His eyes revealed a kind of astonishment. However, the sword-transformed elder's sword intents revolved around his body, and even seemed to flow like a substance, enveloping Li Zongbao and the rest. In the end, he did not take any further action. Chapter 2756. You are a disciple of the Changbai sect? The sword-wielding old man shifted his gaze away from Li Zongbao's indifferent and unperturbed face, passing by Fairy Hongxia and Xiao Mao to land on Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua rolled his eyes. Just as he was about to reply, he suddenly realized something and hurriedly bowed. Senior, please know that I am a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect, not the Changbai sect. Oh. Since you are not a disciple of the Changbai sect, why do you have a faint sword intent on you? Have you also practiced with flying swords? The old man's expression didn't change at all as he asked this question in an indifferent tone. Yes, I was an itinerant cultivator in the beginning. I once obtained an incomplete sword technique. Xiao Hua began to spout nonsense again. What I did not understand was the sword technique. I thought it was my Dao sect's flying sword, so I happily practiced it. That's right, Senior, I have a question. This sword essence. Seeing Xiao Hua's thirst for knowledge, the old man's face revealed an expression of not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Without waiting for Xiao Hua to finish, he waved his hand and said, "Shut up. Do you think I am a teacher of your Imperial Thunder sect? Even if I am a teacher of your Thunder Palace, if I am not your helpless teacher in the 10,000 Thunder Valley, who would answer your question?" Say. Senior knows Xiao Hua's face was filled with disbelief, almost as if he was shocked. Yes, do you think I am one of those golden core cultivators in your Dao sect's discussion hall, who are not even comparable to Jurassic beasts? The old man who transformed into a sword said coldly. The three people who assassinated Qin Jian, and the Huanhua sect disciple who broke the four directions sword formation are all in front of me. If I still don't recognize them, wouldn't I be blind? Xiao Hua's face paled as he looked at the old man with some fear, as if he was afraid he would attack at any time. You have all contributed to the Dao Sword War. I really congratulate you. You have actually obtained the approval of your teacher to travel to the Sword Catacomb. I just don't know. Where are you going? The old man ignored their wariness and snorted coldly. This Xiao Hua looked at Fairy Hongxia and company before turning his head and smiling apologetically. I'm not afraid that Senior will laugh at me for saying this. But in his heart, he admired the sword cultivator's unbending and persevering sword intent. As the saying goes, a place nurtures its own people. Junior thought, what kind of place is this Hung country? How could such a valiant swordsman be born? Therefore, he invited a few fellow Taoists to travel to Hung country. Yes, back then, Zhang Yutong and Zhang Yuha also traveled to Ming Kingdom. This junior also saw them at the Taiqing sect's Feather Immortal Assembly. If it were any other day, you would have come to my sword domain. Perhaps the warriors of my sword domain would have welcomed you with great hospitality. But this is a time of war. Although this old man will not take action, the warriors of my sword region will not show mercy. The sword transformation swordsman said faintly. Moreover, if Zhang Yutong and Zhang Yuha had not met with danger in your Ming Kingdom, and had not returned to the Huan Sword sect, how could this Dao Sword War have been ignited? I hope you will not fall in sword domain like Zhang Yutong and Zhang Yuha. Oh, didn't Zhang Yutong return to the Huan Sword sect long ago? Xiao Hua muttered in his heart, but naturally, he would not say it out loud. Only he laughed and bowed. If Senior has the heart, you can bestow a sword token as a guide for this junior. Scram. The sword transformation swordsman did not know whether to laugh or cry. He really did not want to say anything more to Xiao Hua and the others. With a wave of his hand, a complete sword chi mixed with sword hair rushed toward Xiao Hua and the others. The four of them were shocked and hurriedly tried to dodge. However, in front of the sword chi, a feeling of a complete golden needle pouncing on their faces immediately restrained the four of them. The sword chi then stabbed in front of them. Li Zongbao and the others were shocked and naturally tried their best to break free. However, the invisible sword chi had already imprisoned their true essence, and they were unable to use even a trace of their magic power. They simply wanted to, but they were powerless. However, Xiao Hua was different. At this time, there was no true essence in his meridians. Although his meridians were imprisoned, he could still use the dragon transformation art. Even the golden core in his dantian could also use true essence. However, facing the sword transformation swordsman who had been wasting time with him for a long time, Xiaohua was confident that he would not really make a move. Therefore on the surface he struggled like Li Zongbao and the others, but in reality, he did not use even a trace of true essence. Of course, Xiaohua's hand was already slightly clenched. As long as his guess was slightly wrong, he would immediately use the soul-slaying Yuan light. At the same time, the spiritual fire was also urged into his mouth. Seeing the thousands of sword hair rushing in front of the four of them, those sword hair once again emitted a dazzling brilliance. These brilliances intertwined with each other, and unexpectedly formed a sword net, instantly trapping the four of them. This sword net did not stop. Instead, it brought along the imprisoned figures of the four people, and rushed towards the ground at an extremely fast speed. Huff, 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 four muffled sounds rang out, and the four people fell on the foot of the mountain, their bodies in a sorry state. Humph, the sword transformation swordsman coldly snorted again. He did not even look at the four people. Sword light flashed under his feet, and he directly chased after the four slowly moving lights in the distance. Naturally, it was only the time for half an incense stick to burn when the sword light around Li Zongbao and the others slowly disappeared. The four of them once again flew up from the foot of the mountain. They looked at the sword transformation swordsman who had already disappeared with some shame and anger. They looked at each other, and did not dare to say another word. They once again flew towards the direction of the Huan country. However, at this moment, a flying sword message streaked across the sky like a meteor. It quickly surpassed them and flew into the distance. This flying sword message seems to be flying from the direction of that old fart just now. Xiaohua had already seen it and said with some surprise, "What did they come to the sword tomb for? And why did they send a flying sword message? Sigh, sword transformation swordsman. I have finally seen the strength of a sword transformation swordsman." Li Zongbao did not pay attention to Xiaohua's words. His eyes flashed with a strange light as he sighed and said, "Of course they are comparable to a nascent soul master." Xiao Mao also said, "We are only foundation establishment cultivators. How can we compare?" Tise. It's only so. Xiaohua shook his head and said with disdain. Fairy Hongxia and the other two naturally knew that Xiaohua had the capital to be so arrogant. They could not compare with him. They all curled their lips and somewhat despised him for speaking without thinking. "That's right, big brother." Xiao Mao thought for a moment and asked again. Just now, there were 5 swordsmen. Among them, the 2 in the middle did not seem to be sword cultivators. That brilliance was not sword light. Yes, the other 2 brilliances were not sword light. Xiaohua nodded. He had seen it clearly. It was a brilliance similar to the protective golden light. I'm afraid that those 2 swordsmen used it to protect themselves? That's a little strange, Fairy Hongxia muttered. Looking at the 3 swordsmen, they seemed to be very respectful towards those 2 swordsmen. They even surrounded them. Who are those 2 swordsmen? Who cares who they are? Xiaohua said coldly. Left and right, they are all people that we cannot afford to offend. They are all opponents of nascent soul masters. We are only training in Huan country. Let's go. Li Zongbao was a little disinterested. He waved his hand and said, "That flying sword message just now might have been a message sent by the Sword Transformation Senior to Huan country to inform them of our whereabouts. We still have to hurry and rush out of the sword tomb while those sword cultivators are not guarding it." "That old fart," Xiaohua said coldly. "He is also somewhat sanctimonious." Li Zongbao was right. That flying sword message was indeed sent by a sword transformation swordsman. It was not sent by that green-faced old man. As the sword transformation elder caught up with the 4 brilliances, a red-faced sword transformation elder asked curiously, "Cheng Jianyu, could it be that you are old friends with those 4 Dao sect kids? Why did you talk for so long?" Hee, the sword transformation elder called Cheng Jianyu chuckled and said, "Actually, I shouldn't have stayed behind to ask. On the contrary, sword transformation elder, you should have gone down to take a look." "Oh, Cheng Minghua, what do you mean? This old man is only asking you what you said to those reckless kids who barged into the sword tomb. How can you talk to this old man like that? Could it be that your clear sword sect has some shady business with the Dao sect?" The sword transformation elder with the surname Chong seemed to have a bad temper. My clear sword sect is not as famous as your Void Heaven Sword School. We don't have any relationship with those Dao sect kids. Cheng Minghua was the sect master of the clear sword sect, so he naturally wouldn't back down. He sneered and said, "This old man only wants to tell you that among those 4 Dao sect kids, 3 of them are the Foundation Establishment disciples who killed your Void Heaven Sword School's Qin Jian." Ah, it's actually them. This old man was looking for that terrifying phoenix, but he actually threw himself into my hands. The sword transformation elder with the surname Chong was the sect master of the Void Heaven Sword School. His name was Chong Taishu, and he had long hated Xiao Hua for killing Qin Jian. When he heard that Xiao Hua had come, he actually stopped. "Io, sword transformation elder is mighty," Cheng Minghua said with a smile. "Looking at your posture, you're going to kill Xiao Hua? What? I can't? This is a war. What's there to be afraid of if I kill 1 or 2 Foundation Establishment disciples? I'm not afraid of losing face," Chong Taishu coldly said. "You're not afraid of losing face, but this old man is," Cheng Minghua said with disdain. This old man has never heard of a sword transformation swordsman attacking a Foundation Establishment cultivator, even during a war. He has a grudge with this old man, so this old man can naturally attack him. Chong Taishu was somewhat unwilling. A sword transformation swordsman of my sword domain shouldn't attack a Foundation Establishment disciple. Another sword transformation swordsman persuaded, "Your Void Heaven Sword School does have a grudge with Xiao Hua, but that's between a sword transformation swordsman and a Foundation Establishment cultivator. Even if Xiao Hua was a golden core cultivator, you still wouldn't have the right to attack him. If you attack him, my sword domain transformation swordsman will lose all face." This sword transformation swordsman was an old woman with white hair. Although her voice was sharp, her tone was firm, which made Chong Taishu hesitate. "Beautiful butterfly, no one from your Black Phoenix Sword School has died in his hands, so naturally, you can speak without feeling any pain." Chapter 2757. As the sect leader of the Black Phoenix Sword Sect, even if Lu Ruochang was killed by Xiao Hua, I will not seek revenge from Xiao Hua, unless it is Wu Ming who has stepped into the nascent soul stage. Yu Chong Taishu was a little angry, but at this moment, the swordsman in the middle of the 3 said in a low voice, "3 sword friends. 100 miles ahead. Is it the place where the sword array is set up?" "That's right." When the 3 heard this, they answered almost in unison. Their eyes were filled with joy. Looking at the swordsman who spoke, his body was flashing with golden light, covering his entire body. It was impossible to see his true appearance. Beside the swordsman, there was another swordsman who was flashing with a faint green light. This green light was different from the golden light. The golden light was like the glaring sun, so bright that others could not see the swordsman's figure and appearance. But this green light was like a layer of cloud, covering the swordsman's body. However, whether it was the golden light or the green light, the 2 people's figures were covered. It was impossible to tell whether they were male or female, let alone their appearance. After hearing the 3 people's answers, the golden figure did not answer, but turned to the green figure. However, the green swordsman did not answer either. His figure flew up again and flew into the distance at an extremely fast speed, much faster than before. "Sage." Although Chong Taishu's temper was very irritable, his voice was much gentler at this moment. He said with a smile, "This, the thing that destroyed the sword tomb. What is it?" "Fairy, did she find anything?" Fairy did not say anything for the time being. The golden figure called Sage said faintly, "However, since she found some clues, she must have found something. Let her take a look again. In my opinion, she has lived for so long, so she is definitely experienced and knowledgeable. She will definitely find the source of the sword tomb's disappearance. Actually, it doesn't matter whether the source is found or not," Cheng Minghua also said in a low voice. "The key is whether it will affect my Sword Realm's plan. Sage has lived in seclusion in Alchemy Valley for thousands of years, although he has never appeared in Sword Realm. But he is also a member of Sword Realm. You can't just ignore this matter." Haha, Qingjianyu, don't worry. Since this old man has been persuaded by you. Now it was the key to the sword domain. How can this old man not do anything? That Taoist master said with a smile. Otherwise, this old man wouldn't have spent so much effort to ask Fairy to step in. With her around. What are you afraid of? This. We understand. Blue Butterfly nodded and said, although the cause of the disappearance of the sword tomb is not as important as what Qingjianyu said, if we can find it, we will still have to trouble you. After all, the sudden disappearance of this enormous barrier is a huge problem for my sword domain. Let's go. The fairy has sent us a message. She wants us to go over. The Taoist master seemed to have a special way of communicating with the fairy. Even the 3-sword transformation swordsmen were unable to detect it. Hearing the Taoist master's words, the 3 of them hurriedly increased their speed and flew into the distance. The cyan figure stood quietly where the Buddhist golden array had been. Strange waves of energy were emitted from the fairy's body and spread into the distance like waves. After the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn, the waves slowly converged into the fairy's body. Then the fairy's figure turned into the Taoist master's figure. Chong Taishu, Cheng Minghua, and Blue Butterfly looked at each other with joy on their faces. After a while, the golden figure coughed twice and said, Fairy has found some clues, but we can't be sure. After all, it has been a long time since the disappearance of the sword tomb. There are many swordsmen and cultivators nearby. Even the nascent soul cultivators of the Tao sect use their secret techniques here. It doesn't matter as long as there are some clues. Cheng Minghua waved his hand and said, as long as we can determine whether the disappearance of the sword tomb is related to that nameless from the thunder controlling sect, it will be enough to affect our plan. There is a thin blood aura here. There may have been a large-scale blood sacrifice. The Taoist master replied. However, this blood sacrifice should not be the cause of the disappearance of the sword tomb. Of course, we can't rule out the connection between the blood sacrifice and the disappearance of the sword tomb. In addition, the disappearance of the sword tomb should have nothing to do with the cultivators of the Tao sect. They can't have such great magic power. Well, that's good. Chong Taishu glanced at the green figure and nodded. Now that we know this, we have a plan in our hearts. In the future, we will act according to the previous plan. Of course, if Fairy can tell us the reason for the disappearance of the sword tomb, that would be even better. Blue Butterfly understood Chong Taishu's meaning and whispered. Fairy didn't say. Let me ask her. Taoist master, you hesitated and said. After half a cup of tea's worth of time, the Taoist cultivator said. The fairy is a bit afraid. She suspects that the thing that caused the sword tomb to disappear is an ancient ferocious item. The appearance of this item here is a bit beyond her expectations. She is afraid that if she says it, it will reveal the secrets of heaven. Ah? Reveal the secret of heaven? The 3 swordsmen were dumbfounded. They did not expect that this object would be related to the secret of heaven. Of course, since it was related to the secret of heaven, it must have had little to do with Nameless from the Thunder Controlling sect. What is this object? Can we learn something from it? Blue Butterfly still asked in a low voice, as if she did not believe that by saying the object's name, she would reveal the secret of heaven. Alas, this will make things difficult for Fairy. The Taoist master sighed. Let's ask Fairy. If she doesn't want to, then don't say it. Chong Taishu was also curious. Sure enough, after a while, the Taoist master whispered. Fairy has already told me. This object is really amazing. What is it? Chong Taishu, Blue Butterfly, and Cheng Minghua asked in unison. Actually, even if I tell you, you may not know it. The Taoist master seemed to be keeping them in suspense. That's why we want to learn something. Chong Taishu blurted out. Please enlighten us. Alas, this object is the 10,000 extinguishing heavenly dipper. The Taoist master finally said the name of the object. 10. Extinguishing. Heaven. Dipper? Chong Taishu and the other 2 were stunned. They had never heard of this object before. This is the name of an ancient spiritual artifact. The Taoist master said lightly. Of course, Fairy only has a feeling and is not completely sure. That's why she is afraid of revealing the secret of heaven. As for what this object is and how powerful it is, I'm afraid that the current Taoist sect cultivators do not know. Don't ask too much. Okay, we understand. Thank you, Fairy and Taoist Master. When Blue Butterfly heard that they could not be sure that it was the 10,000 extinguishing heavenly dipper, and that even the Taoist sect cultivators did not know about it, her heart calmed down. She bowed and said, "Let us send Fairy and Taoist Master to Lian country to see the results of our sword domain's battle." Very good. The Taoist Master was hidden behind the golden light, so they could not see whether he nodded or not. Please. Cheng Minghua and the rest said as they escorted the Taoist Master and Fairy into the air. Their direction was different from Xiaohua and the rest. However, just as they were flying, Cheng Taishu said coldly, "Since the sword tomb is fine, we can be at ease. However, how can these Taoist sect cultivators travel freely in our sword domain? If our sword domain did not respond, it would seem that our swordsmen are too lazy." With that, Cheng Taishu flicked his hand and a flying sword message rushed into the air, heading straight for Huan country. Swordsman Cheng is a little bored. Seeing this, Blue Butterfly and Cheng Minghua smiled at each other and said softly. Obviously, they knew the reason for the disappearance of the sword tomb. Although they were not completely sure, they were relieved. Although Li Zongbao and the rest did not know that the flying sword message was as they guessed, it was in order to prevent them from entering Huan country. They had already made preparations in advance. However, the deeper they flew into the sword tomb, the closer they got to Huan country, the more sword cultivators on patrol there. It was almost impossible for Li Zongbao and the rest to hide their tracks and pass through the gaps between the sword cultivators. Many times, Xiaohua and the rest had to face the patrolling swordsmen and the swordsmen from various sword sects. Fortunately, most of the patrolling swordsmen in the sword tomb were at the sword conception realm. A small number of them were at the sword conception realm and below, and only a few were at the sword conception realm or below. As for the swordsmen at the illusory sword realm, they were basically patrolling swordsmen who sent out flying sword messages. The nearby illusory swordsmen would be attracted by the flying sword messages. Of course, these swordsmen weren't a match for Li Zongbao and the others by themselves, let alone Xiaohua. Under the deliberate escape of Li Zongbao and the others, the defense of the sword tomb was forcefully torn open by the four of them, and they charged out. Buzz, a loud buzzing sound resounded, and a yellow dragon flew out from the sword light of the swordsman. Above the dragon, there was a yellow brilliance like a full moon. It was so bright and dazzling that the hundreds of sword lights were overshadowed by this brilliance. "Ha ha ha, you're just a bunch of mobs. You actually dare to show off in front of this young master." An arrogant laughter sounded at the same time after the loud sound of the seal of turning the sea. Xiaohua's slender figure flew out of the crowd like a sharp sword behind the dragon. "If you dare to stop me again, don't blame this young master for being ruthless." Xiaohua stood firmly in the air and pointed his finger. The seal of ocean overturning seal, which had just knocked down several dozen flying swords, began to revolve above the heads of the group of sword cultivators. The cryptic undulations were like ocean waves as they spread into the distance. Under the seal of turning the sea, the hundreds of swordsmen and sword conception realm swordsmen were stunned. They were on patrol in the sword tomb, and didn't know much about the situation of the battle. They seemed to have never heard of the name of the frightening phoenix. Now that they saw a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator so powerful, one person and one weapon facing hundreds of swordsmen without falling into a disadvantageous position, they were already terrified. Chapter 2758. If you dare to do anything else, I will not let my magical treasure go to waste. The one following behind Xiaohua must be Fairy Hongxia. As she spoke, she released a strand of Xiantian primordial water from her body. Although the Xiantian primordial water was very thin, it was formed into a thin layer by Fairy Hongxia. It blocked the spiritual wills of the swordsmen, causing them to be shocked. Li Zongbao and Xiao Mao followed behind Fairy Hongxia calmly. They did not take out any magical treasures. This kind of leisurely flight was even more unfathomable to the swordsmen. They were even more fearful than Xiaohua and Fairy Hongxia. After all, Li Zongbao's cultivation seemed to be at the late stage of foundation establishment, while the ferocious Xiao Hua was only at the middle stage of foundation establishment. For a moment, all the swordsmen hesitated. Damn it! Whoever wants to die, come and find me. Xiao Hua pointed at the seal of the overturning sea. The entire seal of the overturning sea hummed. The coiling dragon roared and circled around the seal. In an instant, all the swordsmen retreated dozens of feet in fear. Ah! I will be leaving. Don't send me off. Xiao Hua laughed loudly and arrogantly swaggered off. The ocean overturning seal slowly followed behind him with a long tail of light behind it. The group of drawing swords and nurturing swordsmen looked at each other, and did not dare to chase after them. Big brother, you are really amazing. This magical treasure is really amazing. After flying for an incense's time, Xiao Mao could not help but look at the seal of the overturning sea in midair, and say with envy. Indeed, just a moment ago, when Xiao Hua was besieged by a group of swordsmen, he activated the cloud-suppressing seal. First, he knocked down a dozen swordsmen from the air, and then he knocked down another dozen swordsmen. Among them, there were even several flying swords of inferior quality that were smashed to pieces, and the owners of those flying swords also suffered serious internal injuries. This was only the beginning. Following which, Xiao Hua's seal of the sea was like a huge dragon emerging from the sea. The immense sealing power of the seal, and the boundless might of the coiling dragon disintegrated the formation of over 100 swordsmen. As for Xiao Mao and Li Zongbao, they did not even need to use their magic treasures. Under the threat of Fairy Hongxia, everyone rushed out unscathed. Haha, this is nothing. Xiao Hua laughed loudly. He turned to look at the sword cultivator who was eager to give it a try and shouted, "You haven't seen Big Brother's awe-inspiring time yet. If anyone dares to step forward, I'll kill them for you to see." As soon as he said that, many swordsmen who were eager to give it a try immediately shrunk their heads, not daring to make any more moves. Thus, Xiao Hua and the other three boldly flew towards the Huan country. After flying for a full 2 hours, the spatial cracks that appeared from time to time within the sword catacomb had completely disappeared. The patrolling sword cultivator disciples also did not appear. Xiao Hua knew that the sword catacomb had most likely passed. He snorted coldly and said, "That sword transformation old ghost was also bluffing. Just based on these sword cultivators and sword nurturing disciples, you think you can stop this young master?" Hee. Fairy Hongxia pursed her lips and laughed. She whispered, "That sword transformation old ghost naturally thought that you were that terrifying phoenix. But who would have thought that? You are not only a phoenix, but a nameless one. In fact, a bald phoenix like you is even more powerful than the real terrifying phoenix." Seeing Xiao Hua and Fairy Hongxia whispering here, Li Zongbao had already moved to the side. Xiao Mao also said a few words and flew to Li Zongbao's side, accompanying him to look at the nearby scenery. Fairy Hongxia and Xiao Hua exchanged a few sweet words. Suddenly, she realized something and her face turned slightly red. She hurriedly clapped her hands, and took out the jade amulet again. She immersed her spiritual will in it, as if she was checking it, but also as if she was avoiding embarrassment. Xiao Hua looked at Fairy Hongxia's bashful face. In this pure white ice, it was still so beautiful. In his heart, he really wanted to go up and hug her. He didn't need to do anything. He could only give her a light kiss on her tender skin. It was incomparably comfortable, incomparably satisfying. Unfortunately, other than Xiao Hua and Fairy Hongxia, there was also Li Zongbao and Xiao Mao. Xiao Hua really regretted it. How could he bring these two along to Huan country? Immediately, after Fairy Hongxia identified the direction, the four of them flew up again, flying towards the northwest of Huan country. Xiao Hua and the other three broke through the defensive line of Huan country's sword cultivators, and entered deep into Huan country. If it was before the sword catacomb disappeared, no one would have known. But now the four of them had passed through the sword catacomb. They had already broken through many patrolling disciples and shocked many swordsmen. It directly impacted the swordsmen's determination to fight to the death with cultivators. How could it not attract the swordsmen's attention? Just as Xiao Hua and the rest flew out of the sword catacomb, the news of them breaking into Huan country had already spread to many swordsmen. It had to be said that there was a lot of karma involved in this, and the root of it was none other than Xiaohua. Of course, perhaps Xiaohua did not care, or perhaps Li Zongbao did not think too much about it. In short, the four of them passed through Huan country unhurriedly under Fairy Hongxia's guidance. The strange scenery of Huan country caused the four of them to gasp in amazement. Huan country was in the extreme north. It was abnormally cold. Usually, there were no spiritual herbs or spiritual trees commonly seen in Shi country. Even green wood and red flower were luxurious here. Xiaohua and the rest flew for several days. Other than snow and ice, there were only cliffs and perilous peaks. But the cliffs and perilous peaks reflected the pale light. Whether it was rock or soil, there was a layer of ice. It was as if the entire Huan country was a world of ice and snow. Of course, in this world of ice and snow, other than pure white, there were still other colors. But in the sky above their heads, a kind of azure color pounced on their heads. It was abnormally pure, as if the entire sky was a piece of transparent blue jade. Moreover, the sky seemed to be extremely high and extremely far. When one looked at it, an extremely mysterious feeling involuntarily arose in one's heart. There was even a kind of feeling, a kind of impulse, that made one want to fly up high and plunge into this boundless blue sky. Moreover, some clouds occasionally floated across the sky. They were extremely ethereal. Not only did they not block the blue sky, but they also showed a kind of vitality, making the clouds appear pure white. And this pure white contrasted with the blue and white where the sky and earth intersected, as if the white of the earth was projected in the sky. The unfamiliar scenery of Huan country brought Xiaohua and the rest far more than that. As the four of them went deeper into Huan country, dozens of days later, the original alternating sun and moon also changed. The day became longer, and the sun on the horizon did not set for several days. Xiaohua and the rest were all foundation establishment and golden core cultivators. Originally, they did not care much about the day and night, but after a long time, they also felt the strangeness of the sky. After Xiaohua and the rest were amazed by this, when the night really came, an even more pleasant surprise was brought to them. In the dark night, the night stars were so bright, so clear, and so bright. The night sky was not completely dark, but there was a hint of blue in the darkness. Moreover, the night was also extremely long, far longer than the day. After the four of them flew for a few more days at night, a strand of lemon green appeared in the distant night sky. It was unknown when this green appeared, but when Xiaohua raised his eyes to look, it had already appeared in the dark blue part of the night sky. This green brilliance seemed to mix into a river and quickly spread towards the sky. As this lemon green became denser, it was as if a spiritual tree was born in the distance, rapidly growing towards the entire night sky. In fact, the lemon green swayed and twisted in the night sky, like the swaying of the wind, or the overflowing of the water. Just as Xiaohua held Fairy Hongxia's hand and called Li Zongbao and Xiaomao to look, the source of the lemon green suddenly flickered, and an almost azure luster quickly overflowed, directly chasing after the lemon green that had already spread across the distant horizon like ribbons. It's really beautiful. When had Fairy Hongxia seen such a magnificent scene? She had long been intoxicated. However, before she could finish her sentence, another dazzling blue quietly surged out after the deep green. It was like a surging river, surging past the green and green as it rapidly rushed into the horizon. It's here again. Fairy Hongxia clapped her hands happily, like a little girl who had seen a beautiful scene, happily shouting. Sure enough, after the blue, red, orange, yellow, purple and other colors surged out, and in between these colors, there were even other colors that were not. The brightness of these colors were different, and the range of their flickering was also different. However, they were all in the shape of ribbons, swaying in the night sky. This dazzling and colorful spectacle not only lit up the night sky, but also illuminated the dark white of the vast land. The rarest thing was that this spectacle also lit up everyone's eyes. Even Li Zongbao's eyes lit up as he stared at the sky. Although he did not say anything, the faintly curled corners of his mouth revealed his thoughts. However, no one knew what Li Zongbao was thinking at this moment. Perhaps he was praying for the millions of Meng mountains? Or perhaps he was thinking of the warm time he had with Wuxia. After an hour, the beautiful brilliance finally dissipated, turning into a faint ribbon of light, blending into the dark blue of the night sky. Come out! When Li Zongbao and the rest were still looking at the night sky reluctantly, Xiaohua coldly shouted, "Who's there?" As soon as Xiaohua spoke, Li Zongbao immediately woke up. With a loud roar, he spread out his divine sense and looked around. Fairy Hongxia and Xiao Mao were a little slower, but when they heard him, they also spread out their divine sense. However, it was quiet all around, and there were no changes. The white snow in the night sky gave off a pale white color, and the continuous mountain ranges were like undulating waves. Occasionally, there were large areas of flat land covered by ice. In the middle of the solid snow field, there were some gray plants, but at this moment, they were barely visible in the night sky. My dear Xiao Fairy Hongxia looked around for a moment, then whispered with a surprised expression, "There doesn't seem to be anything strange around here." Chapter 2759. Fine. Since you didn't come out, then don't blame this young master for being ruthless. Xiaohua said coldly. This young master saw that you didn't take advantage of the opportunity to sneak attack us while we were looking at the scenery. That's why I called out. Saying this, Xiaohua waved his hand, but in the horizon, in the dark blue night sky, there were many dark clouds that came out of nowhere. Good method. Your Excellency must be the thunder-controlling sex Xiaohua, who is known as the terrifying phoenix. A voice came from the foot of the mountain, that was dozens of zhang away. A swordsman wearing a dark red sword robe strangely flashed in midair, and this person's face was filled with unconcealable astonishment. Seeing this swordsman quietly approaching, Li Zongbao and the others were startled, but when they saw that this swordsman was actually at the second grade of the illusory sword realm, they unconsciously understood. Let them all show themselves. Xiaohua said coldly. Since they are all here, why hide? Do you think this is interesting? The swordsman stood in midair, his eyes shining brightly in the night, like flashing sword splendor. His gaze was clearly somewhat pensive, as if he was considering whether Xiaohua was bluffing or not. However, Xiaohua was impatient. He pointed his finger and said, You, it's only 3 people. Do you think this young master can't detect you? When the swordsman heard this, he was extremely astonished, even more so than when he was discovered by Xiaohua. He waved his hand and said somewhat helplessly, Chengzhen, Chengjian, Chengming, you all come out. In the place that Xiaohua had just pointed at, a few faint lights flashed in the air. 3 swordsmen of the same height and height, wearing the same sword equipment, and even their appearances were exactly the same. They appeared there with the same stunned expression. Your Excellency, how did you discover us 3 brothers? The swordsman closest to Xiaohua looked at Xiaohua inconceivably, and unexpectedly asked, This Xiao found you. Do I have to tell you how I found you? Xiaohua looked at the 4 people and said indifferently, You all called out this Xiao's name. Don't tell me you don't want to tell me your name. This sword is Chengzhen. The swordsman who spoke cupped his fist and said, I am Qingjian, I am Chengming. The other 2 shouted in unison. As for the swordsman who appeared first, he cupped his hands and said, I am Qi Qingyi from the 7 Spirit Mountain. 7 Spirit Mountains? Hearing this, Xiaohua unconsciously frowned. He immediately thought of Ji Yi from the 7 Extremes Mountains. Have you seen a disciple of my 7 Spirit Mountain? Qi Qingyi asked with a smile when he saw Xiaohua frown. No. Xiaohua faintly shook his head. This Xiao is merely a foundation establishment cultivator. If I had met many experts, how could I still stand here steadily? What are you trying to achieve by hiding here? Li Zongbao was slightly impatient as he raised his voice and asked. You must be Li Zongbao from the Utopia faction, Qi Qingyi said with a smile. Then he glanced at Fairy Hongxia and Xiao Mao, who were standing beside Xiaohua. The 4 of you who made great contributions in the Great Battle of Dao and Sword have all come to my sword domain. I would like to ask what your intentions are. What intentions can I have? Xiaohua shrugged and pointed to the sky. He smiled and said, This Xiao and the others have long heard of the countless wonders of Hung Country. Taking advantage of the end of the battle, we specially came to Hung Country to travel. Could it be that you think that we foundation establishment cultivators Have some ulterior motives? Foundation establishment cultivators? Qi Qingyi sneered. In the current sword domain, any swordsman would shudder at the mention of the terrifying phoenix. If you were to be treated as Foundation establishment cultivators, you would be able to easily defeat them. If you think of us as Foundation establishment cultivators, then wouldn't we all be blind? However, Qi Qingyi immediately raised his head to look at the sky and sighed. Although the extreme magnetic ray is a famous scenery in my sword domain, if not for fate, you won't be able to see it. Even this Qi has not appreciated it for many years. You are really lucky to be able to see such a wonderful scenery as soon as you enter my sword domain. However, it's a pity that the swordsmen of my sword domain have sacrificed their lives to protect such a homeland. Yet, it's still difficult to ensure the safety of our sword domain for a few years. Extreme magnetic ray. This is the extreme magnetic ray? Hearing this, Xiaohua's heart trembled slightly. Your words seem to be wrong. Without waiting for Xiaohua to speak, Fairy Hongxia retorted sarcastically. The Sword Dao War was started by sword cultivators. If not for your wild ambitions of invading our 3 cultivation kingdoms, who would have the patience to start a war with you? Now that the war has been going on for close to 10 years, there are countless casualties. The number of Dao sect cultivators who have fallen in the war is in the hundreds of thousands. Don't these cultivators like this beautiful scenery? Don't these cultivators want to protect the safety of our 3 cultivation countries? Unfortunately, they are cultivators and not ordinary people. Since they have stepped into the ranks of cultivators, they should sacrifice their lives for our Dao sect's foundation. What do you mean by saying these words in front of us? No other reason. It's just a random thought. Qi Qingyi actually smiled slightly and stopped arguing with Fairy Hongxia. If there's nothing else, this Xiao and the rest will continue on. Xiaohua said indifferently. Naturally, this Qi came here for a reason. Qi Qingyi said with a smile, as if the other party was not a hostile opponent. What? Finally going to make a move? Xiaohua stretched lazily and said with a smile. Of course not. Qi Qingyi shook his head and said, this place is my sword domain, and is already inside the sword tomb. You all have already escaped from the Dao sword war. How can this Qi face you all as enemies? Oh, you actually know that we don't need to participate in the war? So that's how it is. Xiaohua suddenly realized that the flying sword message sent by the sword transformation swordsman was not for the patrolling disciples of the sword tomb, but for the tool cultivator of the 7 spirit mountains. He did not know what kind of medicine this tool cultivator was trying to sell. Qi Qingyi slapped his hand, and a scarlet gold flying sword flew out from his storage bag. He waved his hand and the flying sword slowly flew in front of Xiaohua and said, this is my 7 spirit mountain sword invitation. This Qi represents my 7 spirit mountain sect master to invite you to the 7 spirit mountain. Oh. Inviting us to the 7 spirit mountain? Xiaohua was stunned. He waved his hand and took the flying sword into his hand and carefully examined it. This flying sword was completely scarlet gold, and had complicated sword patterns engraved on it. The words 7 Spirit Mountain could be faintly seen on the sword patterns. That's right. Qi Qingyi saw Xiaohua take the sword invitation and said with a smile, my 7 Spirit Mountain has a great formation called the Brahma Pagoda. This Qi has long heard that the Dao sect's cultivators are skilled in formations. During the Battle of the Sword Tomb, they laid down the 10-direction annihilation great formation, and caused the deaths of many of my sword domain's disciples. Therefore, my 7 Spirit Mountain boldly invites you to come to the 7 Spirit Mountain, and give us some pointers on the Brahma Pagoda great formation. Is there something wrong with you? Xiaohua wasn't polite at all, as if he didn't treat Qi Qingyi as an illusory swordsman. We only came to the Hung country to travel and broaden our horizons. Why would we go to the 7 Spirit Mountain for no reason? We're living happily now and haven't gotten tired of living yet. You don't dare. Cheng Ming sneered at the side. This Cheng has heard of the frightening phoenix's name for a long time, but I never thought that the frightening phoenix wouldn't even have the guts to go to my 7 Spirit Mountain. This Cheng is really disappointed. What does it have to do with me whether you're disappointed or not? What does it have to do with you whether I'm brave or timid? Xiaohua didn't seem to be fooled. He flung his sleeve, and the flying sword flew back into Qi Qingyi's hand. He said, "This Xiao has no interest in giving others pointers on formations. If there's nothing else, this Xiao will take his leave." "Please wait a moment." Qi Qingyi wasn't surprised. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, "You should take a look at the sword invitation first. It won't be too late to refuse." "I won't look," Xiaohua said coldly. "Even if there's a method for me to immediately become an immortal, this Xiao still won't look." "There's naturally no method for becoming an immortal," Qi Qingyi hurriedly said. "However, there's a secret technique for refining spirit tools inside." Spirit tools. When Xiaohua heard this, astonishment appeared on his face. His eyes turned a few times, and he began to ponder. Ever since he met Ji Peng, Xiaohua had been reflecting on various aspects. Among them, he had already listed the Dharma treasures as his #1 priority. However, if he wanted to find a Dharma treasure that suited him, it would be extremely difficult. Now, the weapon cultivator of 7 Spirit Mountain was actually offering the method for refining spirit tools that Xiaohua wanted the most. How could he not be tempted? Forget it. Xiaohua had some calculations in his mind, but his face was full of disdain. He waved his hand and said, "Where in the world would there be spirit herbs that would be delivered to your doorstep? Not to mention that this Xiao doesn't know how to refine weapons. The secret technique for refining spirit tools is useless. Even if this Xiao knew how to refine weapons, I'm only at the foundation establishment stage. How could I refine spirit tools?" Hee. Although this sir doesn't know how to refine spirit tools today, you can't guarantee that you won't in the future. Qi Qingyi laughed. Furthermore, this sir will give this secret technique to the Imperial Thunder Sect's elders. Do you need me to point out the benefits you'll receive? I'm not going. Xiaohua flatly refused and waved his hand. 7 Spirit Mountain is the foundation of weapon cultivators like you. This Xiao will definitely not walk into a trap. How about this? Qi Qingyi thought for a moment and said, "If this sir really doesn't want to go to 7 Spirit Mountain, then this Qi will place the Brahma Pagoda array 100 miles away. It will be right next to your travel route. What do you think, sir?" When Xiaohua heard this, he couldn't help but frown as if he was thinking. However, he had already secretly released his Buddhist awareness. After a moment, Xiaohua sighed and said, "This Xiao and the others are only here to travel. Why do you have to make such a big fuss over nothing? That senior Huajian, isn't he being too careful? Since this sir already knows, then this Qi won't say anything more." Qi Qingyi was indeed straightforward and replied without hiding anything. "Actually, apart from senior Huajian's instructions, this Qi has another plan." "Oh, what plan?" Xiaohua asked curiously. "I heard that this sir managed to escape from the battle at Mount Quanjin. I presume you've seen sword friends Ling Yunwu and Yuan?" Qi Qingyi replied with a question. "What about it? So what if I've seen them? So what if I haven't?" Xiaohua replied ambiguously. Chapter 2760. Ling Yunwu's sword pouch and the Ling Feng sword sect's sword scroll. If you have them in your storage pouch, please return them to my sword domain. Qi Qingyi finally got to the point. Hee, this Xiao finally understands. Xiaohua laughed when he heard this and replied, "You all are still trying to set this Xiao up. You actually gave me a sword array that I have never seen before and asked me to break it. This so-called secret technique of refining spiritual weapons. And this sword pouch are the stakes. If I can break the Fan Pagoda's array, then the secret technique is mine. If I can't break the array, then shouldn't I hand over the sword pouch?" "That's right, that's the case," Qi Qingyi admitted frankly. "To be honest, this sword pouch is very precious. After the array was broken, we sword cultivator disciples searched for it with all our might. However, we couldn't find any trace of it. Even Ling Yunwu and the rest's flying swords couldn't be found. Thus I thought of you. If you really have it, then this bet is actually quite fair." "Fair my ass." Fairy Hong Xia was furious and pointed her finger. "You guys set up the array and let Xiaohua break it alone. Even if he is powerful, how can he be a match for hundreds of people?" Hee, I have already considered this matter. Qingyi smiled and said, my 7 Spirit Mountains Fan Pagoda array is formed by at least 81 disciples. Fairy Hongxia, Li Zongbao and Xiao Mao can all enter the array. Furthermore, my sword domain swordsmen are very particular about fairness. Among the 81 disciples, other than the 9 who are grade 1 illusory sword disciples, the rest are all drawing sword disciples. Xiao Hua is able to fight against Qin Jian. I believe that against a few grade 1 illusory sword disciples, he won't be at a disadvantage, right? Don't listen to his nonsense. Fairy Hongxia pulled Xiao Hua's arm and said. He said that there are 81 disciples. Who knows how many there are in the array? There might even be illusory sword disciples. Xiao Hua looked at Qingyi, then at Cheng Zhen and Cheng Jian, who had been silent all this while. He seemed to be thinking about something. After all, Xiao Hua had fought with Ji Yi of the 7 Spirit Mountain before. He had a very good impression of the magnanimous Ji Yi. And he also had a good impression of the 7 Spirit Mountain. In addition, Qingyi and the other 3 were only covering their tracks and didn't take advantage of the fact that Li Zongbao and the others were immersed in the beautiful scenery to make a sudden move. Xiao Hua already believed most of Qingyi's words. How many people can the Brahma Pagoda's Great Array formation hold? Xiao Hua suddenly asked. 360 people. Qingyi hesitated for a moment before replying. However, I heard that this isn't the limit of the Brahma Pagoda's array. As for the maximum number of people, I'm not too sure. How can this Xiao believe that your secret technique can refine spirit artifacts? Xiao Hua asked again. When Qingyi saw this, he was overjoyed. He pointed at the small sword floating in front of him, and the small sword flew back to Xiao Hua. He said, in order to show my 7 Spirit Mountains sincerity, there is a short description of the secret technique inside. I don't know if you can take a look at it. All right, Xiao Hua waved his hand, and the flying sword fell into his hand. After he immersed his divine telekinesis in it, and carefully examined it for a moment, Xiao Hua clapped his hand, and the flying sword fell into his space. Good. You have guts. Qingyi's face was once again filled with astonishment. He raised his right thumb and said, you are indeed worthy of being called the terrifying phoenix. This qi is truly inferior to you. Humph, there's no need to flatter this Xiao. Xiao Hua clapped his hand, took out the sword pouch, and waved it in front of Qingyi. He said, the sword pouch is right here. If this Xiao can't break the array, then this sword pouch will belong to the 7 Spirit Mountain. Good. Qingyi clapped his hands and said, this qi will immediately return and set up the Brahma Pagoda's Great Array formation. I will quietly wait for you to break the array. After he finished speaking, Qingyi did not say anything else. He quickly led Qingming and the rest into the distance. Darling Xiao, when there were sword cultivator disciples just now, Fairy Hongxia did not ask much. After Qingyi left, she hurriedly said, won't it be fine if we don't go? Their Brahma Pagoda's Great Array formation has 9 illusory sword first-grade swordsmen and 72 drawing sword swordsmen. You and I together only have 4 people. How can we be a match for their array formation? Li Zongbao looked at Xiao Hua and did not ask anything. Sigh, since it's an order from the transforming sword swordsman. If you and I don't go through this sword array, how can we pass through the Huang country? Xiao Hua sighed and said, even if we hide from the 7 Spirit Mountain, there are still the 8 Spirit Mountain and the 6 Spirit Mountain behind us. We will never have an end. Why don't we take this opportunity to break this bullshit Brahma Pagoda's Great Array formation in one fell swoop? That's not all, Li Zongbao added. Although I can't see what's happening 100 miles away, since Qingyi has already said so, perhaps they didn't plan to invite us to 7 Spirit Mountain at all. Perhaps they've already set up a large formation 100 miles away, and are waiting for us to arrive. In such a situation, junior sister, do you think we should fight or hide? Of course we have to fight. Fairy Hongxia pondered for a moment before she raised her voice and said, since we are here, we are the representatives of Dao sect. Even if our lives are in danger, we must go. We must not disgrace Dao sect. That's right. We did not retreat in fear when facing hundreds of thousands of swordsmen. There is no reason for us to be scared off by the seven-spirit mountain. Xiao Mao shouted. Save it, Xiao Hua said with a smile. Don't think too highly of yourself. We are just foundation establishment disciples. We have not reached such a stage. Xiao Hua. Fairy Hongxia waved her hand and pinched Xiao Hua's arm. She said reproachfully. We are all encouraging you. We know that your cultivation is the highest, so there is no reason for you to discourage us. No. Xiao Hua smiled apologetically and pointed into the distance. The seven-spirit mountain has already planned this. They know that we will not go to the seven-spirit mountain. They have already set up a great array in front of us, and are waiting for us to walk into their trap. Do you think we need to go to such a place where we know there is a trap? Then just now. Didn't you already agree? Fairy Hongxia was a little dumbfounded. Sword cultivators are just our enemies. Moreover, we are now in a tiger's den. There is no need to be so trusting. Even Li Zongbao said quietly. What Xiao Hua said just now was just a temporary measure. As the saying goes, a real man knows when to stretch and when to shrink. This is the moment. That might not work. Fairy Hongxia came to her senses and nodded slightly. However, when she looked into the distance, she saw a pale white land and a vast expanse of black ash in the distance. Since the seven-spirit mountain can send 4 illusory sword sect disciples here, there must be people in other places as well. If their disciples are setting up an array in front of us, there must be disciples in other places as well. Didn't Qi Qingyi say before? This Brahma Pagoda array only needs 81 disciples to set up. They must have sent no less than 800 disciples here, right? After all, that communication talisman was sent by a sword transformation swordsman. So what if they have 8,000 disciples? Xiao Hua sneered. If we want to run, can they catch up? Darling Xiao, Fairy Hongxia looked at Xiao Hua and said word by word. I know that you are a rogue cultivator. Before you entered the Imperial Thunder Sect, you had to go through many hardships. Many times you had to face enemies that you could not face. Therefore, when you are facing enemies, most of the time, you would first consider your escape route and not think about how to face them. This kind of strategy, I can't say that it is bad. As Fairy Hongxia spoke, she looked at Xiao Hua's expression and went straight to the point. This kind of thinking, if you were a rogue cultivator, a low-level cultivator, it would work. However, Xiaolang, take a look. I, senior brother Li, and junior brother Xiao are all famous foundation establishment cultivators in the Dao sect. However, we know in our hearts that even if the 3 of us were to join forces, we would still be no match for you. You, Xiao Hua, are no longer the rogue cultivator from back then. You are a hero who has experienced the great Dao sword war. Sooner or later, you will become an important senior in the 3 kingdoms of cultivation. You are already a high-level cultivator. You can no longer have the thought of retreating after a battle and protecting yourself. Sooner or later, you will be the master of a sect. This master's bearing will start from today. It had to be said that women were always outwardly oriented. Although Fairy Red Dawn had not yet held a dual cultivation ceremony with Xiao Hua, she was already planning for her husband. Perhaps Xiao Hua did not think too much about it, but in Fairy Red Dawn's heart, she had already begun to draw up a blueprint for his future. Fairy Hongxia could have said these words through voice transmission or in private. However, she knew that with Xiao Hua's lazy personality, he might not listen to her. If she said too much, Xiao Hua might even get sick of it. Now that she said it in front of Li Zongbao and Xiao Mao, it would make Xiao Hua lose face. However, Li Zongbao was someone that Xiao Hua respected, and Xiao Mao was Xiao Hua's brother. Their words should be more likely to enter Xiao Hua's ears than her. This was also Fairy Hongxia's good intentions and exhaustion. That's right. Li Zongbao clapped his hands and said, these words. Previously, Master kept saying them in my ears. Although I did not mind, I had no choice but to obey. Now that I heard Junior Sister say it again, I really understand Master's painstaking efforts. This bearing is not something one is born with, nor is it something that can be born with the increase of one's cultivation level. It still needs to be nurtured in the details. Previously, I agreed with junior brother Zhao's escape plan. Although it was a wise move, it was harmful to the cultivation of a master's bearing. Moving forward and being worshipped by the cultivators, this is what a master should do. That's right. Big brother. Xiao Mao was also excited. He clapped his hands and praised. Then he flew to Xiao Hua's side and said, "You will definitely be a cultivator on the same level as the Imperial Thunder Sect's Palace Master. Your actions are the role model of the Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples." What senior sister said is also from the bottom of her heart. We can hide today, but the days ahead are long. We still have to pass through Huan Country and the millions of Meng Mountains. Chapter 2761. Hee, alright, that's enough. Xiao Hua's stern face revealed a smile as he looked at Fairy Hongxia, Li Zongbao, and Xiao Mao. He said, "I know what you're talking about. I'm just afraid that the Seven Spirit Mountains formation is too powerful. As for this Xiao, not to mention the Seven Spirit Mountains Brahma Pagoda formation with 81 people. Even if it's a formation with 360 people, why would this Xiao be afraid? Since Big Brother isn't afraid, I'm not afraid either." Xiao Mao patted his chest and said, "We've all seen Lu Ruochang's square sword formation. Why would we be afraid of this Brahma Pagoda formation? Alright. Since that's the case, we'll go and break the formation." Xiao Hua waved his hand. Go, go, go. Li Zongbao also pointed forward. "Let them know how powerful I am." Xiao Hua smiled as he looked at Fairy Hongxia. His heart was overflowing with tenderness. If he was alone, he wouldn't be afraid of a formation of 360 people, let alone 81 people. He would definitely go and give it a try. Even if it was the old man who transformed into a sword, Xiao Hua wouldn't be afraid of him at all. There was no need to be so respectful. However, he understood that his responsibility for this trip to Huan Country and millions of Meng Mountains was not small. Fairy Hongxia had to go. If she was in any danger, he would definitely keep her in his space even if it meant exposing his secret. As for Li Zongbao and Xiao Mao, these two burdens, he didn't know how to deal with them. He could only find a safe way to proceed. However, he didn't expect Fairy Hongxia to refute his idea. Fairy Hongxia was worried that Xiao Hua would be angry. However, Xiao Hua's heart was filled with joy. How could he be angry? Fairy Hongxia's plan for herself showed that Fairy Hongxia treated herself as Xiao Hua's wife and not a disciple of Luyang's Kai family. Dui Qiming probably treated Cui Hongshan the same way. Xiao Hua was happy. At the same time, he thought of his junior brother in Myriad Thunder Valley. If that's the case, my plan will be useful. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua was shocked. Cui Hongshan and Dui Qiming's words suddenly appeared in his mind. Li, on the other hand, is making rapid progress. She's already at the 6th level of Qi refining, right? Now that he's grown up, he rarely returns to the Myriad Thunder Valley. Sometimes when he comes back, he'll stay in his cave and meditate. This little brother also rarely sees him. 6th layer of Qi refining? A few days ago, I heard from eldest senior brother that Li has already reached the 7th layer of Qi refining. Well, it's been a while. For your husband. How can I tell the difference between the 5th, 6th, and 7th levels of Qi refining? Damn it. I didn't pay attention to it that day, but there's a hidden meaning in their words. It was only now that Xiao Hua came to his senses. Lier, when I saw you that day, you seem to have already reached the 6th or 7th layer of the aura refining realm. How many years has it been? There's no reason you're still in the 7th layer of the aura refining realm, right? Presumably, this little fellow had some kind of fortuitous encounter that allowed him to conceal his cultivation. Haha, they must have thought that Li learned some secret technique from me, right? Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he recalled Xiang Zhili's expression when he asked him what kind of divine ability he wanted that day. Husband. Fairy Hongxia saw the strange expression on Xiao Hua's face and hurriedly transmitted her voice. What I said, don't be angry. Eldest senior brother Li and junior brother Xiao are not outsiders. My wife. Xiao Hua held Fairy Hongxia's hand and transmitted his voice back. Your husband knows that I'm of low birth and don't have the self-restraint of a disciple from a cultivation family. If there's anything wrong in the future, feel free to say it. There's no need to be afraid of anything. He. Seeing that Xiaohua wasn't unhappy, Fairy Hongxia's heart relaxed. She lowered her head and said, "Husband is the most important thing. I will definitely remind husband in the future, but I definitely won't be so obvious. Actually, if it wasn't for eldest senior brother Li and Xiao Mao, I would have already transmitted my voice. A good wife and loving mother." Xiaohua lamented in his heart. He slightly exerted his strength and held Fairy Hongxia's hand tightly. He sighed and said, "What virtue and ability did I have to be able to gain the favor of my wife? With my wife's company, I won't be lonely in this lifetime. Hehe, I will definitely do what I can. If this isn't Sister Shui, then who is it?" Fairy Hongxia blinked her eyes and laughed. "Shui Shui." Hearing Fairy Hongxia mention Shui Shui, Xiaohua frowned slightly. "Oh, what's the matter, my husband?" Fairy Hongxia was quick-witted. Seeing that Xiaohua was unhappy, she hurriedly said, "Sister Shui, what's the matter?" Or, "I won't. Junior brother Xiao." Just as Xiaohua was about to answer, Li Zongbao said calmly, "Just now when Qi Qingyi mentioned the extreme magnetic ray, I thought of something." Xiaohua looked at Fairy Hongxia and smiled bitterly. He let go of her hand and flew to Li Zongbao's side. He asked, "Eldest senior brother Li, please enlighten me. It's recorded in the ancient books of the Utopia faction." Li Zongbao said unhurriedly, "The extreme magnetic ray is usually produced in places extremely far away. Because of the magnetic force in these places, it can produce primordial rays that are like sharp swords. Although the primordial rays are formless, they are like substance. When used with flying swords or magic weapons, they are extremely sharp. The seniors of my Taoist sect once traveled to the extreme north and collected the extreme magnetic ray to refine magic weapons. The quality of this magic weapon is far superior to that of ordinary magic weapons. Actually, when Qi Qingyi mentioned the extreme magnetic ray, Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. The extreme magnetic ray was one of the necessary items in the refining method of the spirit exterminating vital ray that Zhang Qingxiao had given him. Although Xiaohua had only glanced at it briefly, he still remembered the name. He was still wondering what the extreme magnetic ray was. He didn't expect it to be found in the extreme north of the Huan country. "How do we collect the extreme magnetic ray?" Xiaohua asked. "Hehe, junior brother Xiao, don't think too much about it now." Li Zongbao laughed. "Those who can travel to the extreme north are all nascent soul stage and separating soul stage seniors. Moreover, the extreme magnetic ray is very strange. If you don't have a magic weapon that can restrain the extreme magnetic ray, even if you go there, it's impossible to get the extreme magnetic ray. So it's like this." Xiaohua still didn't give up. "Then which senior of my Taoist sect has this magic weapon?" "It seems to be the Kunlun sect." Li Zongbao pondered for a moment and said, "The Kunlun sect was established the earliest and has a long history. They seem to have a magic weapon called the two-wing spectroscope, which is refined using the extreme magnetic ray." "Senior brother, which senior is also from the Kunlun sect?" "That's not it." Li Zongbao shook his head and said, "Of course there are many seniors who went to the extreme north. My Utopia faction also has some. However, only the Kunlun sect can successfully collect the extreme magnetic ray and refine it into a magic weapon." Kunlun sect. Xiaohua looked pensive and immediately thought of the frost bamboo. However, Li Zongbao obviously misunderstood Xiaohua and hurriedly said in a low voice, "Junior brother Xiao, don't look down on the Kunlun sect." Although the Kunlun sect didn't have any powerful disciples in this sword battle, and even martial uncle Yuan Zhongyu had a mediocre performance, he was hiding his strength and biding his time. The foundation of the Kunlun sect is far from what we've seen. According to Master, even arrogant sects like your country of Xishanghua sect and Qiqiao sect may not be able to compete with the Kunlun sect. The Kunlun sect is so powerful? Xiaohua had never been to Mount Kunlun in the country of Lian, so he naturally didn't know the situation of the Kunlun sect. Seeing Li Zongbao so serious about this matter, he couldn't help but be slightly surprised. Yes, there are many cultivation sects on the Xiaoyu continent, but there are only a few that can really be in charge. These cultivation sects have also risen and fallen with the passage of time, but if there's one that can really stand tall, It's the Kunlun sect, Li Zongbao said in a low voice. Big brother. At this moment, Xiao Mao opened his mouth and pointed into the distance. If we fly forward for another 10 miles, there's an ice field. I've already seen it. There are hundreds of sword cultivators waiting for us there. Qi Qingyi is among them. Then he pointed to the left and said with a cautious expression, there are also hundreds of swordsmen over there, blocking the way to Mount Meng. Just as Big Brother expected. If we don't break through the Seven Spirit Mountains Brahma Pagoda formation, the disciples of the Seven Spirit Mountain may not let us go. Good. Xiao Hua looked at Li Zongbao and said, we'll fly slowly, and the preparations are almost done. How about it, senior brother Li? You still want to lead the way? Good. Li Zongbao laughed and clapped his hand. A 1-foot-long ring appeared and said, let the sword cultivators of the Seven Spirit Mountains see how powerful I am. Oh, senior brother Li, where's your immortal piercing whip? Xiao Hua was surprised to see Li Zongbao take out a ring. The immortal piercing whip was destroyed in the spirit-devouring formation of the sword cultivators. Li Zongbao's face showed a trace of pity. I don't have a suitable magic treasure, so I'll use Master's yin-yang ring for the time being. Oh, the spirit-devouring formation. Xiao Hua immediately thought of the few spirit-devouring bugs in the sword pouch and asked, can't it be repaired? Maybe it can, maybe it can't. Li Zongbao said desolately. Even if it can be repaired, I'm afraid it won't be the same immortal piercing whip as before. All right then. Senior brother Li should follow behind me. As he spoke, Xiao Hua released his divine sense and looked ahead. Huh? Xiao Mao. Your divine sense can see more than 10 miles away? Li Zongbao naturally released his divine sense and suddenly realized something. He looked at Xiao Mao with some astonishment. Xiao Mao's face showed a trace of unnaturalness, and he said with a smile, yes, my divine sense is stronger than ordinary cultivators. Now I can see more than 10 miles away. That's right. Xiao Hua didn't notice this before. His divine sense was stronger than ordinary cultivators, and he also had Buddhist awareness. When Xiao Mao said it just now, he didn't care at all. Now that he heard Li Zongbao's astonishment, he understood. Ordinary cultivators in the late foundation establishment stage could only see more than 10 miles away with their divine sense. Xiao Mao, who was just in the middle foundation establishment stage, could see more than 10 miles away. The strength of his divine sense was not ordinary. Chapter 2762. However, the strength of one's divine sense was not only related to one's cultivation method, it was also closely related to some secret techniques. In particular, the range of one's divine sense should be one of the secrets of a cultivator. Xiao Mao was not on guard against Xiao Hua and the others, so he inadvertently revealed it. If it were anyone else, he would definitely have concealed it. Of course, Li Zongbao also understood. He only asked a question and then shut his mouth. He didn't say anything else and looked into the distance. Fairy Hongxia blinked her eyes and looked like she wanted to say something. Xiao Mao was more observant than Xiao Hua. He quickly smiled and said, senior sister, please don't ask me. I've been like this since I was young. I don't have any secret techniques. Oh, Fairy Hongxia was a little disappointed. She smiled and said, there are very few secret techniques that can strengthen one's spiritual sense. Although my cultivation is not bad, my spiritual sense cultivation is still lacking. I haven't found a suitable mental cultivation method yet. Is that so? Why didn't you say so earlier? Xiao Hua was looking ahead. When he heard Fairy Hongxia's muttering, he asked curiously, I thought you were a disciple of the Huanhua sect and had a golden core stage master. I thought you would have a lot of secret techniques. Hee. Fairy Hongxia laughed. My dear Xiao, you can ask senior brother Li. How can an ordinary cultivator obtain the spiritual sense forging technique? Even for a genius like senior brother Li, I'm afraid he only has a few simple chants. Li Zongbao did not reply. Obviously, he had the spiritual sense forging technique. However, it belonged to the Utopia faction. He could not tell Fairy Hongxia. Xiao Hua heard and felt a little heartache. He knew why Fairy Hongxia did not tell him. There were many cultivation methods and secret techniques in his space, and he was slowly comprehending them. He also had the so-called spiritual force forging technique, but most of them were damaged and incomplete, so they weren't very useful. After thinking for a while, Xiaohua took out a jade slip and handed it to Fairy Hongxia. He said, "This is God's guidance. It is a spiritual sense forging technique. Take it and comprehend it." "No, my dear Xiao." A sweet smile appeared on Fairy Hongxia's face as she said, "This is the secret technique of your Imperial Thunder sect. It's not suitable for me to comprehend it yet, of course." What Fairy Hongxia said was at this time. If it was at that time after the dual cultivation ceremony, she would definitely ask Xiaohua for it. It doesn't matter. This isn't a secret technique of the Imperial Thunder sect. Xiaohua waves his hand and the jade letter flies in front of Fairy Hongxia and says, "In the future, if you want any cultivation technique or even other things, you can tell this Xiao." Thank you so much, my dear Xiao." Fairy Hongxia was overjoyed and accepted the jade slip with a smile. "Big brother, you can't favor one and discriminate against the other. I don't have such a secret technique." Xiao Mao's eyes lit up when he heard that it wasn't a secret technique from the Imperial Thunder sect. I'll give it to you. Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "I'll let your senior sister copy it for you." "Thank you, big brother." Xiao Mao called out with a smile and flew in front of Fairy Hongxia. "Thank you for your trouble, senior sister." Fairy Hongxia also didn't delay. While flying, she made a copy of the complete God's guidance and gave it to Xiao Mao. Xiao Mao took the jade letter, and just by using his divine sense to scan it, he was dumbfounded. How was this a secret technique? It was simply a cultivation technique. Just the first level of the chant was enough to make him puzzled. Unconsciously, Xiao Mao felt a trace of warmth in his heart. The loneliness that he couldn't dispel all this time seemed to be gradually disappearing. The four of them flew at a leisurely pace for nearly the time it took to eat a meal. In the sky in front of them, in the white dawn, there were about 100 swordsmen wearing the same sword attire standing in an orderly manner. These swordsmen were all strong and healthy people. Their stature was almost uniform. Qi Qingyi was standing in front of these disciples. Seeing that Xiaohua and the others were actually smiling and flying over without the slightest bit of panic, he was very surprised. At the same time, the slight delay he had when he received the message from the swordsman had already disappeared. "You really keep your word." Qi Qingyi flew a few feet forward and said with a smile. Xiaohua was no longer hiding behind Li Zongbao like he was during the Dao sword battle. He also flew forward and said with a smile, "There are disciples of the Seven Spirit Mountain all around. I can't go anywhere else even if I want to. I can only keep coming here. People of the sword domain have always been hospitable. I was afraid that you would misunderstand my hospitality, so I wanted to invite you over." Qi Qingyi's expression didn't change as he replied naturally. Xiaohua didn't waste time with him. He pointed his finger and said, "Is this the Brahma Pagoda formation of your Seven Spirit Mountain? You are really impatient." Qi Qingyi shook his head and said, "The Brahma Pagoda formation of my Seven Spirit Mountain is a famous formation in the sword domain. How can it be so simple?" "Oh, what? What do you mean?" Xiaohua was a little confused. "If you don't set up the formation, how can we break it? You should hurry up. We still have to hurry." "Ha, you are really interesting." Qi Qingyi laughed. "You can still be so calm in the face of my Seven Spirit Mountain's Brahma Pagoda formation. This is the first time I have seen you." "Yes, I haven't seen it before, but there will be many in the future." Xiaohua nodded and said seriously, "When I establish a sect in the future, I will set a rule. No one can panic when they see the Brahma Pagoda formation of the Seven Spirit Mountain." "Ah. Ha. Qi Qingyi was really laughing very happily. He cupped his hands and said, "Xiaohua, you are indeed a wonderful person. You are worthy of my sword realm transforming into a sword and sending a message to my Seven Spirit Mountain." After a while, Qi Qingyi stopped laughing and said, "If you were a disciple of my sword domain, I would definitely think of ways to befriend you. Unfortunately, you are a disciple of the Dao sect. What a pity." "Pity? What's there to pity?" Xiaohua asked curiously. "Everyone in the world, regardless of whether they are cultivators or swordsmen, are all humans. They are all cultivators. Why can't I befriend them? Even if. Forget it. Actually, among the sword cultivators of your Huan country, there are also people who are magnanimous. I also respect them. Xiaohua naturally couldn't say Ji Ye's name. Instead, he looked at the distant horizon and said, "Oh." A strange look appeared in Qi Qingyi's eyes. He said curiously, "This is also the first time I have heard of this. Previously, all the cultivators I have met didn't see us as cultivators. They only felt that they were of the orthodox Taoism. If everyone was like what you are thinking, I'm afraid that such a meaningless great battle between Taoism and sword would never occur." Xiaohua interrupted Qi Qingyi's words. "Unfortunately, this is only a beautiful wish. Those who walk different paths cannot work together. This is also an ancient saying." "That's right." At this point, Qi Qingyi felt a sense of hypocrisy. He waved his hand and said, "Guests of the Tao sect, please. After everyone enters the formation, the Brahma Pagoda's formation will be activated." "Wait," Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "Before entering the formation, I still have a condition." "What condition?" Qi Qingyi frowned. "Why didn't you mention it earlier? It's not too late to mention it now, right?" Xiaohua said indifferently. Qi Qingyi thought for a moment and asked, "What condition do you have? Tell me about it first." "We came here to gain experience. It has nothing to do with the great battle now," Xiaohua said word by word. "Since your sect received Senior Huaijian's message and had no choice but to set up the sword formation, we can naturally accept it. However, life and death are involved within the formation. If we were to use too much force, don't blame us for harming the lives of your sect's disciples." "Naturally. If my 7 Spirit Mountains disciples were to use too much force, you must forgive them," Qi Qingyi said indifferently. Then he quietly listened to Xiaohua's explanation. "We don't want to take too many lives. Therefore, we will try our best to hold back within the formation." Xiaohua looked at the 100 or so 7 Spirit Mountains disciples in the distance and said, "However, I will only hold back in this battle. If we encounter any sword cultivators in the future, I will not show any mercy. I hope you can promise me that once we break the Brahma Pagoda's formation, you will not send any more sword cultivators to harass us." This Qi Qingyi frowned. He didn't know why Xiaohua was so confident in breaking the formation. However, when he looked at Xiaohua, Li Zongbao, and the others, he came to a realization and said with a smile, "I will inform Senior Huaijian of your benevolence. However, I cannot promise you this. I can only promise you that if you break the formation of my 7 Spirit Mountain, my 7 Spirit Mountains disciples will not stop you. If any 7 Spirit Mountains disciples try to stop you, you can kill them. My 7 Spirit Mountain will not hold it against you. As for the other sword sects, I don't dare to represent them." Xiaohua saw that Qi Qingyi had misunderstood and knew that he thought he was stalling and wanted to finish the job in one fell swoop. However, he didn't explain and said, "That's all I have to say. Don't blame me for being ruthless in the future." "All right, I will definitely pass on your words. Please, Senior Huaijian." Qi Qingyi nodded and stepped aside. The 100 or so swordsmen behind him moved at the same time, revealing a passage. However, the 100 or so swordsmen's faces were no longer as calm as before. They had all heard Xiaohua and Qi Qingyi's words. Xiaohua's current cultivation was only around the middle stage of foundation establishment, which was equivalent to a 3rd or 4th stage swordsman. He wasn't too far off from these swordsmen's cultivation. However, according to Xiaohua's words, he didn't put them in his eyes at all. Therefore, each and every one of them glared angrily at him. Their gazes were like flying swords that pierced Xiaohua full of holes. Xiaohua really didn't put these swordsmen in his eyes. He swaggered and flew in Li Zongbao, and the others were different from Xiaohua. Their faces were filled with vigilance as they released their divine senses. Only then did they follow Xiaohua through the gap between the swordsmen. At this moment, the 100 or so swordsmen were still in neat rows, forming a square formation. Xiaohua and the others had entered a corner of the square. In fact, the entire square was already covered by Xiaohua's Buddhist sense. There were no strange fluctuations at all. It was no different from ordinary swordsmen standing in the air. Chapter 2763. Of course, these 7 Spirit Mountain swordsmen were weapon cultivators. Their bodies flickered with a faint brilliance. The brilliance circled around them and swam up and down. When Xiaohua and the others entered, the rhythm of the flickering light and swam was somewhat chaotic. But as Xiaohua went deeper, the brightness and darkness of the brilliance began to converge. Even the rhythm of the brilliance began to synchronize. Oh, so that's how it is. Although Xiaohua was smiling, his heart was as clear as a mirror. Not to mention that the 7 Spirit Mountain had received the order to transform into swords. They would not act rashly. Even if they did not transform into swords, if the 7 Spirit Mountain wanted to meet him, they would definitely not use some sloppy array. Since they dared to set up a sword array, then they must have the confidence to kill him in one strike. The combined attack of 100 weapon cultivators. I'm afraid it's powerful. This young master was exaggerating just now. Xiaohua's mind whirled. I shouldn't have let Li Zongbao, Xiao Mao, and my wife enter the array. This first strike is not easy to receive. After the first strike, this young master will deal a heavy blow. While Xiaohua was thinking, he had already arrived at the center of the array. This was a space about 100 feet in size. It was also square. Are you ready, sir? Qi Qingyi's voice came from outside the weapon cultivators. It sounded like a reminder from fellow disciples who were competing. This Qi is going to activate the array. Xiaohua looked around and transmitted a few words to Fairy Hongxia. He raised his voice and said, This Xiao and the others are ready. Sir, bring it on. Xiaohua's voice was also gentle. It was impossible to tell that this was a fight between cultivators and swordsmen. His tone was even more indifferent than when he first entered the Thunder Arena. All right. Be careful, sire. The formation before Qi Qingyi could finish speaking, his voice trailed off. The weapon cultivators around Xiaohua and the others simultaneously flashed with a beautiful brilliance. This brilliance was like a rising sun, illuminating the nearby night sky. Moreover, this sun was actually rising slowly, rapidly covering an area of several hundred feet around Xiaohua and the others. Even Qi Qingyi's words couldn't be heard. Damn, this great array is powerful. Xiaohua felt that his divine sense and Buddhist consciousness were also being blocked, and he couldn't help but feel a little surprised. His entire body flashed with faint lightning, and his entire body rapidly rushed up, rushing towards the gap above his head that hadn't closed yet. Unfortunately, it was at this moment that Qi Qingyi's voice rang out from above again. Sir, the Great Formation hasn't been activated yet. According to our previous agreement, you can't attack yet. Why would this young master care so much about you? Xiaohua sneered and stretched out his hand. A rumbling sound of thunder came from between his hands. This was a spell that he had been thinking about ever since he couldn't summon lightning in the Blood Drop Paradise. Now that he suddenly used it, he was still a little rusty. Your Excellency, please calm down. Qi Qingyi's voice was still filled with concern. If you don't abide by our previous agreement, not only will you not be able to obtain the Spirit Tool's secret refining technique, the 7 Spirit Mountain will also report this matter to Senior Huajian. If Senior Huajian were to personally take action, would you find it interesting? Well, Xiaohua hesitated after hearing Qi Qingyi's threat. However, while he was hesitating, the gap above his head sped up. You dare to trick this young master. Xiaohua suddenly came to a realization. His hands moved, and with a crackling sound, a few bolts of lightning appeared between his hands, striking towards that crack. His body shot out like a sharp arrow once again. Ha ha ha, this Qi is thinking for your Excellency. Qi Qingyi laughed loudly, and his voice disappeared again. Rumble. The lightning struck the gap that hadn't closed yet, and a huge sound rang out. However, wherever the lightning struck, the brilliance on the weapon cultivator's body became even more intense. Furthermore, this brilliance continued to spread outwards and only stopped after it had spread for several dozen feet. Just as the brilliance returned to its original state, Xiaohua could clearly see that within the brilliance, in the gaps between the weapon cultivators, the lightning was gradually dissipating with a sizzling sound. Damn it, the 7-spirit mountain came prepared. Xiaohua understood. They must know that this young master's phoenix celestial body can attract lightning, so they set up the Great Brahma Pagoda formation. This great formation has the ability to avoid lightning, and all the lightning can only concentrate on the gaps between the disciples who set up the formation, and can't directly hit the disciples who set up the formation. While Xiaohua was pondering, the radiance above his head had already merged. Streams of flowing radiance flowed back and forth within the space of several hundred meters like water ripples, covering the figures of the 81 weapon cultivators who set up the formation. Even Xiaohua's divine sense was blocked within this space, and could no longer penetrate it. It seemed like this was another blood drop paradise. Buzz, just as Xiaohua was about to rush towards the weapon cultivator closest to him, a huge rumbling sound rang out from the radiance all around him. Not good. I'm afraid this is the first attack. Xiaohua thought to himself. He didn't have time to attack the weapon cultivator closest to him, and his figure rapidly descended. However, he still shouted. Quickly set up the innate primordial water. Yes. In the center of the great formation, Fairy Hongxia had already received Xiaohua's instructions. When she heard the order, she immediately shook her shoulders, and the ice phoenix celestial body that was several hundred meters in size was released. She opened her mouth, and a stream of sparkling innate primordial water sprayed out. Under Fairy Hongxia's control, it protected Li Zongbao and Xiao Mao. When Xiaohua landed, he landed right in the gap of the primordial water. Boom! A huge restrictive force struck from the place where Xiaohua landed, and it hit the primordial water that covered Xiaohua's figure. The innate primordial water created waves of several feet high, and Fairy Hongxia's ice phoenix celestial body swayed twice. It seemed to be quite strenuous. Moreover, after the radiance dissipated, the restrictive force didn't disappear. Instead, it surrounded the sparkling water and slowly expanded outside of it. Xiao Lang. Fairy Hongxia laughed bitterly. Although I can use the ice phoenix celestial body to cast the innate primordial water, part of the attack on the primordial water will also be transmitted to the celestial body. If it was a dozen people, it would be fine. But with nearly 100 people attacking, I'm afraid I won't be able to last long. All right. Xiaohua nodded slightly and said, You just need to protect senior brother Li and Xiao Mao. I'll speed up the process of breaking the array. As he spoke, Xiaohua clapped his hand and the Kunlun mirror appeared in his hand. He turned his head and ordered, Let me out. Fairy Hongxia hurriedly activated her phoenix celestial body. The innate primordial water that was originally easy to break open was now somewhat strenuous under the restrictive force. Open. The moment Xiaohua came out, the innate primordial water immediately met with the restrictive force. He sneered in his heart and activated the Kunlun mirror in his hand. As he chanted an incantation, a blue radiance shot out from the Kunlun mirror and struck the nearest radiance. When the blue light beam struck the radiance immediately froze and turned into a blue ice shard. Within the ice dregs, there was a blue crystal. The figure of an extremely astonished weapon refiner disciple was actually embedded within this crystal. However, the crystal didn't fall. Instead, it hung within the radiance that seemed to be a hole. When near the crystal, the radiance flickered at the same time. Circles of obscure ripples surged towards the area that was struck. As the radiance flickered, the blue ice shard actually began to melt. The weapon cultivator's figure also began to move. Powerful. Xiaohua secretly praised in his heart and sneered at the same time. If this array was used to deal with ordinary golden core cultivators, it would naturally work. Unfortunately, the one you've met is this young master. How can these 100 or so foundation establishment swordsmen be a match for this young master? Even if you set up an array, it's still not enough. Go. Xiaohua pointed with his finger, and the Kunlun mirror flew out from his hand, casually shining in a direction. With a whoosh, another blue-colored light beam shot out, and with lightning speed, it struck another weapon refiner disciple. That azure ice crystal appeared once again. At this time, Xiaohua didn't wait for the brilliance to flicker. He urged the Kunlun mirror again. This time, the place that was hit was near the previous location Wang. Within the entire formation, a rumbling sound suddenly resounded. It was as if 100 magical treasures had been activated at the same time. An enormous force that could even sink a mountain into the ground was born from the top of Xiaohua's head, pressing down on Xiaohua. Ha! Who's afraid of you? Xiaohua laughed. He divided his divine sense to urge the Kunlun mirror, and continued to attack. At the same time, he clapped his hand and held the wishful steel staff in his hand. Like a sturgeon swimming against the current, he rushed towards the huge force. The wishful steel staff in his hand also struck out. Boom! What a huge shock! The entire space was shaking. That huge force was actually caught by Xiaohua's wishful steel staff. Xiaohua's figure didn't even move at all. Like a pine tree, he stood majestically. Do you want to come again? Xiaohua shouted. Following the direction of the force, he rushed up. The wishful steel staff was raised high, and he casually hit a place in the array. Boom! The brilliance was annihilated with the fall of Xiaohua's wishful steel staff. There seemed to be no stagnation. At the place where the wishful steel staff fell, a weapon refiner disciple who had gradually transformed into a magic weapon was also hit out of the array by Xiaohua. The weapon refiner disciple's body slowly recovered. He looked at his figure that was flying further and further away in disbelief. He tried his best to control his balance. Xiaohua, just as Xiaohua turned to look at the weapon refiner next to him who was hit, and was about to raise the wishful steel staff again, he heard the voice of Hongxia Fairy. Xiaohua's divine sense swept back, and saw that Hongxia Fairy's Ice Phoenix Dharma body could no longer bear the heavy pressure and attack of the Brahma Pagoda's array. It had already been absorbed into her body, and the innate primordial water's defense was also restrained by the imprisonment. It was getting thinner and thinner, and it could no longer be maintained. As for Li Zongbao and Xiaomao, they had already rushed out of the primordial water, and took out their respective magic weapons. The magic weapons flashed with brilliance, and emitted a strange sound as they attacked the weapon refiner disciple closest to them. However, the weapon refiners were now all in the divine transformation stage. Each of them was like a magic weapon. Although the power of a single magic weapon might not be comparable to Li Zongbao and Xiaomao, under the Brahma Pagoda's array, the Yin and Yang rings and the Heaven and Earth rings were restrained by the magic weapons. They were always hit, and were unable to hurt the weapon refiners of the Seven Spirit Mountains. Chapter 2764. Go, Xiaohua did not dare to be negligent. He patted his forehead, and an even more vast primordial true water rushed out from the top of his head, protecting Hongxia Fairy, Li Zongbao, and Xiaomao. You don't have a magic weapon, so wait here for a while. Xiaohua shouted and waved his staff again. Just as he was about to attack, his gaze fell and he was slightly stunned. Previously, he had already sent a nearby artifact cultivator disciple flying, revealing a gap. But now, that gap had already disappeared, and another artifact cultivator, who looked exactly the same, appeared in that gap. Strange. What's going on? Xiaohua felt strange. When he waved his hand, the staff broke the force of imprisonment, and the brilliance around him disappeared, and he sent another disciple flying from the array. However, just as the big array revealed a flaw, the brilliance of the whole array once again flowed like water waves. When a layer of watery brilliance swayed, a disciple naturally appeared in the gap, and then another attack was sent out from the gap of this disciple. Oh, I understand. Xiaohua suddenly realized. This big array is like a whole body of water. If I send one flying, it can replace another disciple from the side, and transfer the flaw to another place. But what if this young master sends disciples flying again and again? After Xiaohua understood, he was very happy again. Although these 81 disciples were powerful, and Li Zongbao, Xiaomao, and Hongxia Fairy were definitely not their opponents, their attacks could not be seen in Xiaohua's eyes. Although he could not use the seal of turning the sea, he could not use the flying sword, but with the staff and the Kunlun mirror, Xiaohua was confident that he could break this array. Come, come, come. I'll let you see the power of this young master. Xiaohua knew that there was something fishy about it. He waved the staff and displayed the heavenly staff technique, smashing it towards the brilliance of the array. Boom boom, boom boom. With the fall of the staff, one disciple after another was sent flying by Xiaohua. Xiaohua did not need to change places at all. He only needed to hit one place, and the staff would not miss. This is bad. This brat is quite astute. How did you see through the flaws in the formation so quickly? Qi Qingyi stood outside the great formation. When he saw many disciples flying out in just a short while, he was shocked again. Also, this guy's staff technique is like a body cultivator's. He's even stronger than us artifact cultivators. If he continues to fight, the formation will definitely break. However, Qi Qingyi had still underestimated Xiaohua. Just as he was pondering, a huge rumbling sound rang out from the other side of the great formation. A gentle and slightly mocking voice rang out from there. We have already escaped from the Brahma Pagoda's great formation. Your great formation has been broken by us. This voice belonged to Fairy Hongxia. However, before she could finish her sentence, a strange goo-goo sound came from the array. The light of the array was suddenly extinguished. "Io, not good!" Fairy Hongxia screamed again. At this moment, the great formation of the Brahma Pagoda was shaking rapidly. The weapons that were transformed by the artifact cultivators were like stones falling from the peak of a mountain. They quickly collided with each other, producing a caw-caw sound. Following the continuous vibrations, the shape of the great formation rapidly changed. A sharp protrusion slowly rose from the center of the great formation, and the surroundings of the great formation shrank again. Fairy Hongxia and Li Zongbao's figures were revealed from the side of the great formation. They were somewhat stunned as they looked in front of them. A huge pagoda of about 10 feet in height was formed from the great formation. The huge pagoda was rather rough, and the weapons that were transformed by the artifact cultivators were bricks in the huge pagoda. There were still some gaps between these bricks. Swoosh, like ripples on water, a ray of light flashed out from the top of the pagoda. It quickly brushed down. Wherever the ray of light passed, the gaps between the bricks would immediately become tight. In the blink of an eye, a huge, lofty pagoda was revealed in mid-air. When the ray of light reached the bottom of the pagoda, it flashed past each other, and immediately rushed up to the top of the pagoda. A loud buzzing sound rang out within the huge pagoda. This is the real Brahma Pagoda Great Formation. Fairy Hongxia looked at Li Zongbao. Li Zongbao's eyes were also flashing with shock. He could understand the formation of 81 artifact cultivators. However, it seemed like this was the first time he had heard of the 81 artifact cultivators forming a huge weapon. It was even more so the first time he had seen it. "Your Excellency and the rest of you, please wait here for a moment. You have all come out, but Xiaohua has yet to come out. This great formation, he has yet to break it." Qi Qingyi glanced at Fairy Hongxia and Li Zongbao, as if he did not put them in his eyes. After saying a few words, he rushed up to the top of the Brahma Pagoda. "Although we have all come out, we can still attack from outside the formation." How could Fairy Hongxia be at ease with Xiaohua? She shook her shoulders and was about to release her Ice Phoenix celestial body. "Since you have all come out, it means that you have already broken the formation. If you continue to attack, you will be violating the agreement between you and me," Qi Qingyi said coldly. "There are 81 disciples here who are also abiding by the agreement. If you are the first to violate it, don't blame me for going back on my words. At that time, who do you think will be the one at a disadvantage?" This Fairy Hongxia hesitated slightly. Li Zongbao gave her a look and transmitted his voice. "Junior sister, don't be impatient. You know junior brother Zhao's cultivation better than me. He could have come out just now, but he stayed in the formation in order to hold Xiao Mao back. This Brahma Pagoda Great Formation is indeed powerful, but I feel that it is impossible to keep junior brother Xiao here. You and I will just watch from the sidelines." Okay, Fairy Hongxia was actually worried. When Li Zongbao said this, she immediately realized what kind of person Xiaohua was. He was a fierce person who had scared Lu Ruochang away. How could he be trapped in this Brahma Pagoda Great Formation? If it wasn't for the fact that he didn't want to kill and didn't want to reveal his true cultivation, what was there for her to worry about? Before the Brahma Pagoda Great Formation was really activated, Xiaohua was holding the wishful staff, and kicking the weapon cultivator disciples outside the Great Formation. Then, he heard a rumbling sound coming from the space behind him. Xiao Hua scanned it with his divine sense, and couldn't help but laugh. It turned out that Xiao Hua had been using the Kunlun mirror to emit a frosty air. During this period of time, it had already condensed more than a dozen places in the Great Formation into crystals. The Great Formation emitted a fierce brilliance to repair these crystals. However, at the same time, Xiao Hua had kicked more than a dozen weapon cultivator disciples out of the Great Formation. All of a sudden, there were less than 30 disciples in the Great Formation. Although the entire Great Formation was overflowing with brilliance to repair these gaps, the positions of the 81 weapon cultivator disciples were fixed. Right behind Xiao Hua, a rather large gap had already appeared. With a single glance, one could see that there were roughly 20 or so empty spots for weapon refinement disciples. This Brahma Pagoda Great Formation actually sent the disciples behind Xiao Hua to Xiao Hua. However, because the weapon cultivators in the Great Formation were different, they had no choice but to reveal a slight flaw in the distance from Xiao Hua. Of course, this flaw was only revealed slightly. With a rumbling sound, the brilliance quickly repaired it. Ha ha ha. This Great Formation has been broken by us. Senior brotherly, let's go. We'll rush out of the Great Formation. Xiao Hua laughed loudly. His figure swayed and flew towards the gap. Xiao Hua's flying speed was so fast. Although Li Zongbao, Fairy Hongxia and the others were in the center of the Great Formation, and were very close to the gap, when Li Zongbao and the other two were not even halfway to the gap, Xiao Hua had already swept over their heads. Swoosh, splendor flashed rapidly in the gap. Pa pa pa, sounds rang out. Like building a wall, the great array once again drew weapons from all over, and piled them up in the gap. It seemed to be making up for this gap. Fight! How could Xiao Hua allow the Great Formation to be repaired again? With a point of his finger, the Kunlun mirror that had already completed its task flashed with an earthy yellow brilliance once again. A powerful surge of magic power condensed in the earth pillar surged towards the gap, immediately diluting the brilliance in the cave. The pa-pa-pa sounds immediately became much softer. Rumble. After the brilliance of the Great Formation was diluted, it shook violently once again. A powerful suction force was generated from all around the Great Formation. Not only were the weapon cultivators who were sent flying by Xiao Hua pulled back by the huge force, Fairy Hongxia, Li Zongbao, Xiao Hua and Xiao Mao who had already rushed to the gap were also pulled back. Get out! Xiao Hua was ranked third. With a wave of his Taoist robe, heaven and earth in the sleeves was unleashed. In an instant, it enveloped Fairy Hongxia and Li Zongbao. With a casual push, it cut off the suction force of the Great Formation. Their bodies became light, and like arrows, they shot out of the rapidly shrinking gap. After sending off the two of them, Xiao Hua stretched out his hand and used another heaven and earth in the sleeves to grab Xiao Mao. There was no other way. Xiao Mao's cultivation was the weakest among the four of them. Previously, he was the closest to Xiao Hua, but was also far away from the gap. Even when he used all his magic power to fly in this direction, there was still a huge gap. But just as Xiao Hua grabbed Xiao Mao, the rumbling sound beside him became even louder. The brilliance of the Kunlun mirror was covered by the brilliance of the Great Formation, and the gap was quickly repaired. Damn it, you can't bully people like this, alright? Xiao Hua couldn't help but smile bitterly. It seemed that every time they met with danger together, it would always end up like this. Attack. Xiao Hua did not hesitate. He once again activated the Kunlun mirror, and was about to launch an attack. At this moment, the entire space emitted a strange sound, as if it was about to destroy the heavens and the earth. The entire space quickly turned upside down and vibrated rapidly. An indescribable, seemingly irresistible wave of energy was produced in the entire space, enveloping Xiao Hua and Xiao Mao within. Even the brilliance of the Kunlun mirror was restrained by the rapidly reverberating waves in the space, unable to attack. Instead, it slowly descended and flew above Xiao Hua's head. Chapter 2765. Big Brother. Seeing this, Xiao Mao seemed a little ashamed. He looked at Xiao Hua and wanted to say something, but found it hard to open his mouth. Hee, don't say anything. Xiaohua laughed. I didn't plan to go out at all. I wanted to send you out first so I could harm these weapon cultivators. Now you're in for a treat. Take a good look. Yes. Xiao Mao knew that Xiaohua was comforting him. If he wanted to break the array himself, he wouldn't have let the three of them in. Just like what Fairy Hongxia and Li Zongbao saw from the outside, the entire array changed abruptly. Xiaohua and Xiao Mao were dumbfounded as the array shook violently. However, they were even more shocked than Li Zongbao and Fairy Hongxia. This was because in their eyes, the array became bigger and bigger. The space in the pagoda grew from 100 feet to a few hundred feet. Of course, if it wasn't the array that became bigger, then it was Xiaohua and Xiao Mao who became smaller. As for who was bigger and who was smaller, Xiaohua and Xiao Mao who were in the array naturally couldn't tell. This is the real Brahma Pagoda array. Just like Fairy Hongxia, when Xiaohua saw the pagoda-shaped space within the Brahma Pagoda, he muttered to himself in his heart. It was the 81 magic artifacts that formed the entire Brahma Pagoda. Ee-wah-wah, an inexplicable sound came from the top of the pagoda. It slowly descended and reverberated in the entire pagoda space. See, Xiao Mao frowned first, as if a trace of impatience had appeared in his heart. Oh, what's wrong? Xiaohua didn't feel that there was anything strange about the sound and looked at Xiao Mao strangely. This sound is very irritating in my ears. Xiao Mao looked at Xiaohua and answered honestly. And there's a kind of impulse to let go of everything. Let go of everything? Xiaohua was slightly stunned. It feels like everything you do is meaningless. Let go of everything and surrender. Xiao Mao explained. This is the sound attack of weapon cultivators. Damn it, it's really powerful. I see. Xiaohua nodded slightly. However, this sound didn't have the effect that Xiao Mao had described. I'm afraid it's because of the difference in cultivation level. Xiaohua didn't think too much about it. He pointed his finger, and the Kunlun mirror once again flashed with brilliance. The entire mirror faced upwards, and with a schwa sound, a green brilliance several feet in size shot out from the Kunlun mirror, shooting straight towards the surface of the pagoda that was flashing with a faint white light. The green brilliance shot straight up, and just as it flew up 1 foot, the misty green threads of light began to transform, and thick green trees began to appear in the brilliance. With a rumbling sound, the green trees collided with each other like mountains and seas of trees. They swayed and collided with the Brahma Pagoda. Following the loud roar, the entire pagoda shook violently. The faint Sanskrit chants actually began to appear intermittently amidst the roar. All right. When Xiaohua saw that the Kunlun mirror was effective, he was overjoyed. He activated the magic power in his body, and rays of green brilliance unceasingly surged out. These rays of brilliance struck the same direction of the Brahma Pagoda, causing the entire pagoda to shake incessantly. It seemed like it was about to collapse. Buzz, a milky white brilliance along with a kind of intense fluctuation, appeared at the top of the pagoda. It covered the bottom of the pagoda, and scattered the brilliance of Xiaohua's Kunlun mirror. And wherever the brilliance went, the shaking of the Brahma Pagoda gradually stopped. With just these. Xiaohua sneered and instructed Xiao Mao. You will fall to the bottom of the great array, and see how I will break it. Yes. Xiao Mao knew that he couldn't help, so he released the universe ring to protect himself and flew down. However, as he flew, he slightly turned his head back, as if he was worried about Xiaohua. Rise! When Xiaohua saw that Xiao Mao had flown far away, he shouted loudly. He held the Kunlun mirror with both hands, and the tricolored brilliance of the Kunlun mirror soared into the sky, like a waterfall, and struck the top of the Brahma Pagoda. Repulse! Just before the tricolored brilliance rushed into the Brahma Pagoda, a muffled sound came from the top of the pagoda. At the same time, countless rays of white brilliance emerged from all over the Brahma Pagoda like fireflies, and gathered at the top of the pagoda. In the blink of an eye, a gigantic humanoid figure was formed in front of the tricolored brilliance. This humanoid figure was 3 zhang tall, and its facial features were somewhat blurry. The upper body was slightly clearer, and it had 2 arms and a body. However, the lower body was still formed by the white brilliance, and it didn't transform. When this humanoid figure appeared, It immediately clenched its huge fist and smashed towards the tricolored brilliance of the Kunlun mirror. Boom! With a loud sound, the tricolored brilliance was actually destroyed by the fist. Although the scattered brilliance hit the Brahma Pagoda again, it was obvious that the attack on the Brahma Pagoda had weakened by a lot, and it didn't pose a threat. Artifact Spirit. Seeing the birth of the gigantic spirit, Xiaohua was shocked at first, but then he came to a realization. Those specks of brilliance that were like fireflies from before were the artifact spirits of every artifact cultivator's artifact. These artifact spirits were extremely weak, and these 81 artifact spirits were gathered together with the help of the Brahma Pagoda's great formation, giving birth to an even larger artifact spirit. This artifact spirit was equivalent to the combined power of 81 swordsmen. Not to mention ordinary foundation establishment cultivators, even golden core cultivators would be defeated if they entered this formation. Therefore, it was extremely normal for this gigantic spirit to be able to disperse the attack of Xiaohua's Kunlun mirror. Good. Understanding this, Xiaohua beamed with joy. Since these artifact cultivators of the Seven Spirit Mountain could give birth to weak artifact spirits, then Qi Qingyi's promise must be based on something. The Seven Spirit Mountain definitely had a secret technique to create artifact spirits. And since Xiaohua had broken this formation, would he still have to worry about not being able to obtain the secret technique? You all are really underestimating this young master. Xiaohua activated the Kunlun mirror and said with a smile, "This young master's strength is comparable to a nascent soul cultivator. How can your 81 swordsmen compare to this young master? Not to mention now, even before the great battle of the Sword Catacomb, these 81 swordsmen were no match for this young master. Did this young master eat those 360 foundation establishment pills for nothing?" As he thought about this, the thick brilliance of the Kunlun mirror shot out again, and shot towards the gigantic spirit roar. The gigantic spirit grabbed with its hand, and its palm, which was several feet in size, directly slapped down, covering the three rays of brilliance. Immediately, a huge force was born from the Kunlun mirror, pressing down the Kunlun mirror by several feet. Oh! Xiaohua's figure naturally followed the Kunlun mirror down by several feet, and he couldn't help but be slightly surprised. Although this Kunlun mirror was marvelous, it wasn't a spirit artifact after all. In front of an artifact spirit, all attacks were restricted. Fine, this young master is still in his old profession. Xiaohua thought for a moment, and with a wave of his hand, the Kunlun mirror flew into the air, and the three rays of brilliance aimlessly attacked the entire Brahma Pagoda. Xiaohua slapped his hand, and the wishful staff appeared in his hand again. He casually waved the staff and rushed into the air. Roar! The gigantic spirit seemed to have some spiritual intelligence. It roared and grabbed with its hand, and the huge force of imprisonment mixed with a strong force grabbed towards Xiaohua. If nothing unexpected happened, even a demonic artifact couldn't block this grab of the gigantic spirit. The power of imprisonment and attack would definitely fall on Xiaohua's body. But how could the physical body of a Dao sect cultivator resist the artifact spirits condensed by 81 artifacts? Unfortunately, this Brahma Pagoda array met Xiaohua. Boom! The wishful staff, which didn't belong to the five elements, was able to hit the palm of the artifact spirit. In addition to the power of imprisonment and attack being scattered by Xiaohua's wishful staff, the palm of the artifact spirit was also shattered by the wishful staff. The shattered pieces of the artifact spirit rotated in the air for a moment, hesitated for a moment, and wanted to merge back into the gigantic spirit. However, the fragments swam around the gigantic spirit's palm for a moment, and then flew towards the top of the pagoda. Haha, so that's how it is. Xiaohua laughed and waved the wishful staff in his hand again. He rushed to the side of the gigantic spirit, and with a crackling sound, he fought with the gigantic spirit. The gigantic spirit was just an artifact spirit. Although it had some spiritual intelligence, it could only use offensive methods and completely rely on its own vast power. How could it know anything about close combat? Encountering Xiaohua, whose spiritual power was not weaker than the gigantic spirit, he was not afraid of his imprisonment at all. Moreover, the wishful staff was an opponent that could hit the gigantic spirit's body. Hiss, outside the Brahma pagoda, Qingyi stood at the top of the pagoda. He could see clearly from the outside, and the expression on his face was extremely ugly. He really didn't expect that Xiaohua's spiritual power could be comparable to 81 artifact cultivators. He also understood in his heart that within this Brahma pagoda array, Xiaohua couldn't fake it. He could only fight the gigantic spirit head-on. What was even more unexpected was that Xiaohua actually had a demonic artifact, and this demonic artifact could even hit the artifact spirit. Could it be that Qingyi raised his hand, somewhat hesitant? Just as Qingyi was thinking for a moment, the gigantic spirit's arms had been completely defeated by Xiaohua, and all the scattered artifact spirits had gathered at the top of the Brahma pagoda. The Kunlun mirror was still fierce, and from time to time, it attacked the Brahma pagoda, which had lost its host. However, fortunately, the gigantic spirit's arms were just a formality. He could attack from all over his body, which was why he was able to block Xiaohua. This kind of clumsy artifact spirit tempering method is only so. Xiaohua's figure was far from being comparable to the clumsy gigantic spirit. The wishful staff could always defeat the gigantic spirit's body. Xiaohua couldn't help but scoff at this. When Xiaohua flew to the back of the gigantic spirit, he roared, "You go to hell!" Immediately, the wishful staff was raised high and hit the gigantic spirit's back extremely heavily. Although the gigantic spirit's body was huge and the wishful staff was only 3 feet in size, as the wishful staff hit, there was a loud rumbling sound. The gigantic spirit's back collapsed rapidly, and a fist-sized black hole was created by the wishful staff. Moreover, this black hole did not heal, and then it expanded again. It was like a beast's mouth, swallowing the entire gigantic spirit. Naturally, after the artifact spirits that formed the gigantic spirit's body were swallowed by this black hole, they scattered and could no longer form the gigantic spirit. They flew to the top of the pagoda. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.